And we're going to start things off with the latest buzz in extraterrestrial news, the mysterious bodies of supposed mummified aliens that were displayed in front of the Mexican Congress. Jamie Maussan, a journalist and UFOologist, presented these fossilized bodies to the politicians, claiming that they're over 1,000 years old. He testified under oath saying, quote, "These specimens are not part of the evolution of our world. They were not recovered from a UFO scrap. They were found fossilized in a diatom moss mine." So this is the first public congressional hearing on UFOs in Mexico, which is pretty cool. But I gotta say, these alien bodies look a little suspect. They're kind of cute. If this is what our standard grays really look like, that would be a pleasant surprise. They've always been reported as being short and scrawny, but these things look like they're almost doll-sized. Anyway, I hope this is legit, but what do you think? Let us know in the comments. Next up, we have a UFO hovering over Mexico City. This video is taken in 2015 and shows what appears to be some kind of mysterious object hovering in the air. Pretty good video because we get a good long look at the object, and it definitely looks odd. Strange shape to it. It's been described as beetle-like, which I can definitely see. The video was sent to Scott Waring, a self-proclaimed UFO expert. He's come up a couple times in my previous videos. Anyway, he thought the clip was legit enough to share on his YouTube channel. This could be a drone, but again, what do you all think? Next on the list, we have the 1991 Eclipse UFO sighting. This was a pretty big case at the time, probably one of the most famous UFO sightings in Mexico. During the 1991 solar eclipse, there was a big celebration in Mexico City, and many took to videotaping the sky to document being thrust into sudden darkness in the middle of the day. But on some of these tapes, folks managed to capture something they weren't expecting to see. A mysterious silver disc-shaped object hovering through the sky. A television executive named Guillermo Aragon took the most well-known piece of footage and sent the tape to, again, Jamie Maussan, the same guy we brought up before with those alien bodies. This guy's been in the UFO scene for a very long time. Anyway, the footage was released to the public, and the TV station was flooded with phone calls with people claiming to have seen the object, and more tapes started getting sent in, some of which showed that same strange disc-like object. At number 7, we have the Mexican Air Force sighting. On March 5th, 2004, several Mexican Air Force pilots filmed a series of strange, glowing, unidentified flying objects, 11 in total, hovering in the skies over southern Campeche state. The pilots were on routine anti-drone trafficking vigilance when they spotted the strange objects which they reported surrounding their jet. They attempted to pursue the objects, but eventually they disappeared out of sight. Gotta say, this is a pretty compelling piece of footage. Even though the video quality isn't great, you get to observe these objects for a long time. It's not like they just appeared and flew away in the blink of an eye. Plus, I always find it interesting when pilots who spend a great deal of time flying in the air observe things like this and have no explanation for what it is. Number 6, Carlos de los Santos sighting. Carlos de los Santos is a retired pilot who experienced a terrifying encounter with 3 disc-shaped UFOs in 1975. He was on a flight back to Mexico City in his Piper 24 Comanche. There was nothing wrong with the plane, weather conditions were good, and he was about an hour into the flight when suddenly he spotted something on his right wing. It was a silver disc-like object, about 13 feet long. He was incredibly startled and confused by this, and to make matters worse, it wasn't long until he spotted an identical object on his left wing. And then a third object appeared, this time hurling towards him from the front of the plane, and it just missed him. And it was at this point that Carlos lost control of the plane altogether. He tried to move the control wheel, but the plane wouldn't respond. He made a frantic call to air traffic control saying he had lost control of his aircraft and that he was surrounded by UFOs before suddenly his plane completely changed course. The plane started to ascend, climbing higher and higher into the sky. He basically thought he was going to die. Just when he'd started to accept his fate and that there was no way he was going to get out of this situation, the strange objects flew away from his aircraft and he found that the controls were suddenly working again. At number 5, we have the Popocatépetl volcano. I could fill up an entire list with the UFO sightings spotted in this one area alone. It's not only one of the most active volcanoes in the country, but it seems to be one of the biggest hotbeds of unidentified flying objects as well. UFO sightings around the volcano have raised eyebrows and sparked curiosity among locals and researchers. Witnesses describe seeing strange, unidentified flying objects near the volcano, often displaying unconventional flight patterns and characteristics. The sightings have been documented by multiple sources too, including photographs, videos. One of the factors contributing to the frequent UFO sightings near the volcano is its geographic location. The volcano stands at an elevation of over 17,000 feet and is situated in a region known for seismic and volcanic activity. Some speculate that these conditions might attract extraterrestrial, intersect, or create unusual atmospheric phenomena that lead to the sightings. Reports of UFOs around the volcano have also drawn the attention of researchers and organizations dedicated to studying unidentified aerial phenomenon. These groups aim to collect data and analyze eyewitness accounts and investigate the nature of these sightings. Now, I think some of these sightings can obviously be attributed to natural phenomenon or aircraft, but there are others that remain unexplained. Next on the list is the luminous UFO. Just at the end of July this year, in a town called Tamaulipas in northeastern Mexico, this strange glowing object was seen hovering in the sky. It's hard to really call it an object though. Kind of just looks like light. Maybe there's an object projecting the light, but it's just obscured by clouds or haze, and this is just the lights from the aircraft piercing through. Anyway, the clip was shared to TikTok by user Marcela Guzman, and it's kind of beautiful actually, almost like a jellyfish floating through the sky. Number 3, the Las Lomas UFO. This next piece of footage was taken in 1997. As you could probably tell by the tasty VHS grainy quality, it was taken in the Las Lomas neighborhood in Mexico City. Pretty obvious what's going on in this video. You see what looks like your classic B-movie disc-shaped UFO floating through the sky as our cameraman films on with audible shock and confusion. The object seems to be quite wobbly too, which leads a lot of commenters to say it looks like it's being held up with a string. There are other less skeptical viewers though who speculate that maybe there was something wrong with the vessel, which would help explain why it was flying so low in the first place as well. It's actually a pretty fascinating video because while the wobbliness of this supposed alien vessel does make it look less convincing, it does appear to be floating in the distance. It doesn't look like some kind of camera trick. And in terms of faking something like this with computer generated effects, that was much more difficult to pull off in 1997, especially for your average everyday person. Next, we have a story from Reddit that I'm going to call Consumed by Light. It was posted by Space Chainsaw 810 and goes like this. Not my story, but my wife's middle school teacher in Mexico. The teacher was with a group of her 3 friends driving from, I believe, Tijuana to Mexicali. To get there, they passed through a very curvy downhill grade called La Rumorosa, and the surrounding terrain is rocky cliffs and desert as they descend. You start to descend and see a very bright light coming towards them. They think it's a semi-truck with their high beams on, but the light gets brighter and brighter until it consumes them. They all wake up hours later at the bottom of the grade on the side of the road, unharmed, but they all had a strange needle mark on their upper forearms. Finally, we have Mayan artifacts. There's this theory that's floated around for years that the Mayans were visited by extraterrestrials thousands of years ago, possibly aiding them in constructing the brilliant architecture that they had. Many Mayan artifacts came to public attention in 2012 following the Mexican government's disclosure that they had been kept hidden for approximately 80 years. Some of these artifacts feature carvings and drawings that bear pretty striking resemblance to flying saucers and small beings with large eyes. Speculations about whether the Mayans had actual contact with aliens became a pretty talked about thing at the time, and certainly the Mayans were known for their remarkable artistry, but some of these pieces were just a little too strange. For instance, one artifact is a sarcophagus lid portraying an individual seemingly enclosed within a capsule resembling a spaceship. Another piece is the palanque slab, depicting a figure seated in what closely resembles a cockpit adorned with numerous knobs and buttons. So, did the Mayans encounter something of extraterrestrial origin, and these artifacts were their means of documenting those encounters? There are quite a few similarities between the designs found on some of these ancient artifacts and the depictions of modern UFO sightings and spacecraft designs.
Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have They Might Have Died Off. This one is a bit disappointing, to be honest, okay? Bad news first, good news later. But it's basically just a theory that it's probably pretty likely that there were aliens at some point, but since the universe is so old, they might have already died out. All life and cultures rise and fall, and researchers put together a model in recent years that would give more insight into the likelihood of this theory. They took things into account, like sun-like stars that are not too close or too far from planets that are similar to Earth, as well as how frequently there are deadly radiation blasting supernovas, which of course could prove to be a huge problem for life forms, as well as the time that it takes for intelligent life to evolve, provided all the conditions are right. And once the evolution has taken place, how long it would take for a tool-bearing form of life to then destroy itself. That's a lot of factors to consider, and through all of this, it was found that the highest likelihood of life before ours in the Milky Way emerged around 5.5 billion years ago, which would place that before our planet was even formed. This of course would have provided plenty of time for all of the events I just mentioned to have occurred. Not only this, but with a recent James Webb Telescope discovery, we might be learning that galaxies existed long before what we previously thought. James Webb has been using its incredibly powerful technology to glimpse back into the earliest moments of our universe, and just this week it was announced that there are some distant galaxies that predate what we once thought was possible. This is all to say that there are now millions of extra years that have been added to the timeline where some form of life may have developed. And who knows, maybe these life forms do still exist, but we are just too far away for us to reach. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Roswell incident. One of the most famous alien conspiracy stories of all time, this whole rigmarole started in 1947 when some sort of crash took place near a ranch in Roswell, New Mexico. Shortly after this, the Roswell Army Airfield released a statement saying that they had recovered a flying disc from the ranch, but the Army quickly retracted the statement and said that it wasn't that, but instead was a conventional weather balloon. Alright, heard that before. This was a little sketchy, but most people let it slide until the 1970s. What happened in the 70s is that a retired lieutenant colonel began to speak out. In an interview with a UFO researcher, he said that the weather balloon story was a cover-up and that alien remains were actually recovered from the crash site. There were both first and second-hand witnesses who claimed that not only were there at least one, but possibly more alien spacecrafts that had crashed at the scene, but also that extraterrestrial remains were also recovered by the military, who then began to engage in a cover-up. In 1994, the story changed from a weather balloon to a nuclear test surveillance balloon from Project Mogul, and it was stated that the stories of the alien bodies were probably just test dummies that had been dropped from high altitudes. I'm not gonna lie, the whole thing sounds a little sketchy. I obviously wasn't there, so I can't say for certain what happened, but someone is definitely lying about it. That's all I know. In our number 8 spot today, we have the radio signals. Basically, we're getting radio signals from somewhere, but we just aren't quite sure where. It started in 2007 when we began getting what are called fast radio bursts, and they are a totally mysterious phenomena to scientists. These bursts are only a few milliseconds long, but they emit more energy than the sun does in 24 hours. All of this is already super cool and interesting, but here's an even crazier thing about them. The main thing that we know about these bursts is that they're coming from outside of our own galaxy. Space is very cool and very unbelievable. This obviously has led a lot of experts to believe that it could possibly be coming from an advanced civilization that is quite far away, and they may be trying to contact us, but we just don't have the technology to interpret the signals. Maybe one day scientists will figure out a way to accept whatever message it is they are trying to send, or maybe one day we'll get a visit from them and then they'll be mad at us for not answering their messages and just leaving them on red. Either way, it's all very cool and very interesting. In our number 7 spot today, we have the cigar-shaped UFO. Alright, let's set the stage. It's 2:45 a.m. on July 24th, 1948, and there are 20 passengers aboard a twin-engine propeller plane that is at 5,000 feet being flown from Houston to Atlanta by pilot Clarence S. Childs and co-pilot John B. Whitted. Out of the 20 passengers on board, 19 of them are asleep at these early morning hours, and everything seems to be going as per usual until it wasn't. The two pilots and the one passenger who was awake all witnessed the same thing about 20 miles southeast of Montgomery, Alabama. About a week after the incident, the pilot explained what he had seen by saying, quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power, shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light. By his estimates, he watched the UFO for about 10 seconds before it completely vanished. The co-pilot gave a similar explanation and also added, quote, "The object was cigar-shaped and seemed to be about 100 feet in length. The fuselage appeared to be about 3 times the circumference of a B-29 fuselage. It had 2 rows of windows, an upper and a lower. The windows were very large and seemed square. They were white with light which seemed to be caused by some type of combustion. I asked Captain Childs what we had just seen and he said that he didn't know." While this is obviously very strange and peculiar, what has driven UFO enthusiasts even more is the fact that this strange sighting was of course later investigated by the US government, but the results of that investigation have allegedly been mostly destroyed. Does that mean that maybe they found something they aren't willing to share yet? Some believe that perhaps the pilots and passenger witnessed a secret Soviet spy craft, but others believe it definitely was something of the extraterrestrial variety. In our number 6 spot today we have the NASA Viking experiment. So this is one of the more debated ones on today's list, but that does not mean that it isn't evidence. In 1976, NASA's Viking landers tested the soil on Mars and found some chemicals that could be attributed to signs of life. The soil was mixed with radioactive carbon-labeled nutrients and then tested for the production of radioactive methane gas. The test ended up receiving a positive result, which could indicate that something in the soil is metabolizing the nutrients to produce the gas. Despite further efforts, there still hasn't been any life found, but one of the scientists who worked on this original project, and others as well, stand by what they found and argue that the technology at the time wasn't advanced enough to find the key evidence of life. Hopefully with the Perseverance rover that is, digging in the soil up there now, maybe now is the time that we have the technology to find the true answers behind this one. In our number 5 spot today we have the Mount Rainier incident. This incident took place when Kenneth Arnold was en route from Chehalis, Washington to Yakima, Washington on June 24th, 1947. Kenneth was traveling in a privately owned plane when he suddenly saw a bright flash on his wing. He looked around and this is when he saw a chain of 9 unidentified flying objects approaching Mount Rainier. He explained that he, quote, "could see their outline quite plainly against the snow as they approached the mountain." He continued on saying, quote, "They flew very close to the mountain tops, directly south to southeast down the hog's back of the range, flying like geese in a diagonal chain-like line as if they were linked together." From here he explained that, quote, "They were approximately 20 or 25 miles away and I couldn't see a tail on them. I watched for about 3 minutes, a chain of saucer-like things at least 5 miles long swerving in and out of the high mountain peaks. They were flat like a pie pan and so shiny they reflected the sun like a mirror." He also told investigators that he had never seen anything travel that fast in his life. Unfortunately, Kenneth's story was met with disbelief and actually a lot of ridicule. This made Kenneth quite resentful, but he said, quote, "They can call me Einstein, Flash Gordon, or just a screwball, but I am absolutely certain of what I saw." He added that if he ever saw a phenomena in the sky, quote, "even if it were a 10-story building flying through the air, he would not say a word about it." In our number 4 spot today we have the fossilized microbes. Another piece of controversial evidence that came from Mars was announced in 1996. NASA scientists announced that they had potentially found what appeared to maybe fossilized microbes in a lump of Martian rock. It is likely that this rock came off during some sort of Mars collision and just casually floated around the solar system for, 15 million years before landing in Antarctica in 1984. Just casual space stuff. After analyzing the rock, it was revealed that it contained organic molecules and small specks of mineral magnetite, which sometimes is found in the bacteria on Earth. Upon further analysis with an electron microscope, it was claimed that there were signs of nanobacteria. Since then, some claim that the magnetite wasn't that similar to those found in bacteria, and that there is a belief that the signs of nanobacteria could have been grown in a lab. In our number 3 spot today we have the Big Flap. Back in 1952, while the panic over flying saucers was very real, there were a bunch of strange reports of potential UFO sightings in the skies of Washington, D.C. These sightings later became known as the Big Flap, and they were being reported by civilians as well as military radar operators and pilots. In fact, there were so many people reporting these UFOs that a special intelligence unit of the US Air Force was sent to investigate. What really sparked a lot of of concern with these sightings is when radar operators at National watched the objects fly past the White House and Capitol building. This is when 2 F-94 interceptor jets were sent to investigate, but both times, as they approached the mysterious objects, showing on their radar screens, they would just suddenly disappear. In the end, as a result of the investigation, what they found, or really the lack of findings, combined with the official explanation that was released, only worked to fuel some very early conspiracy theories that the government was working to hide the evidence that proves the existence of alien life. In our number 2 spot today, we have Europa. One of Jupiter's moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it, and in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that it's possible that alien microbes might be responsible for this red color. The surface of the moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a very bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and compounds to make the data make sense. There are some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions, and that also have that red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for the color on this moon. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where they are actually located. Some geological activity on the moon could then push them closer to the surface, where they are then flash frozen in place. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the astronaut sightings. We can sit here on Earth all day and talk about the potential for alien life, but who knows more than the people who have actually been to space, which of course are astronauts. Definitely on the list of coolest and scariest jobs in the entire world, there haven't been a ton of people who have had the unbelievable privilege of experiencing space firsthand, but there are even less of them who have claimed to see something that could potentially be proof of alien existence. People who have claimed these sort of things include Edgar Mitchell, Catherine Coleman, and Dr. Brian O'Leary. The very interesting part about many of these claims is that they also include some sort of government cover-up as well. There was also Buzz Aldrin, who spoke about his Apollo 11 experience, and he detailed the crew seeing something flying alongside them, and at first they believed it was the final stage of a detached rocket, but then Mission Control confirmed that it was actually 6,000 miles away from them, leaving them with no answers on what the flying object could actually be. I can't imagine going to space at all, let alone encountering a UFO flying right beside me. Also, I can't believe that I hadn't heard of that story before, because to me, that sounds like full-blown alien contact.
Starting us off at number 10 is the Madonna with St. John. Dating back to the 15th century, this iconic painting is arguably one of the most debated depictions of alien life on Earth. Likely painted by Domenico Galileo, I mean there is debate there too, but that's another story. However, as you can see, it depicts the Madonna with baby Jesus and St. John. However, if you zoom into the top right corner, you'll notice something very strange. There is an unnamed man shielding his eyes from what looks like a bright light in the sky, and beside him is a dog staring up at the same shining object. The object appears to be strangely similar to most modern depictions of a UFO, painted as a dark oval with light rays shooting out from every angle, and has definitely been the subject of much debate among alien believers and non-believers for decades. Now, it wasn't unusual for the time to paint angels or other celestial beings brightly shining down on us from the sky, but as this specific painting appears to have no such addition to the light and is simply a strangely specific flying saucer, it has led many to believe that the painter was depicting a real-life alien sighting. And truth be told, it wasn't the first time such things showed up in artwork, and it is also not the last. Could it really be a UFO? I don't know, you tell me. Coming in at number 9, coins. During a house renovation in Egypt, a group of workers say that they found 2 coins that had very unusual portraits on them. The first they found resembles the head and shoulders of an alien, while the other looks more like it depicts an alien spaceship landing, and they immediately freaked out. Plus, one of them apparently had the words opportunus adest carved on the back, which is Latin for there is an opportunity, which definitely comes across a little spooky. I won't lie, there's a lot of debate around the validity of these coins. As many have pointed out, the coins could have easily been manipulated by believers, but it has been countered by the fact that either way, there's no actual concrete proof that they don't come from aliens. I mean, I have some questions. Would aliens even use currency like us, let alone physical currency? I honestly have no clue, but I mean, if I came across these coins, I too might be just as suspicious about their origin. Coming in at number 8, the Second Punic War sightings. During the Second Punic War, which occurred in ancient Rome between 218 and 201 BC, there were apparently many sightings of strange sky phenomenon that today believers claim were aliens coming down to Earth. These alleged sightings were found in the Annales Maximi, which is essentially a historical record kept by the chief high priest during the Roman Republic, and in it is the tale of a day in 218 BC where ships that apparently gleamed in the sky came out of clouds and stayed floating in the sky. And I mean, I don't blame anyone for jumping to an alien conclusion on that one. Then, 2 years later, in 216 BC, a similar sighting was documented where large gleaming round shields allegedly traveled through the air. Conspiracy theorists have clung on to these writings, pointing out how both descriptions can easily be imagined as the common UFO described in our modern era. Plus, this war was not the only one in history to claim such things happening in the sky. I mean, just like everything else on this list, will we ever know if the writings in the historical record really were an alien sighting? Probably not, unless we can figure out a time traveling situation, but it is a little suspicious, I would say. Coming in at number 7, Egyptian hieroglyphs. There's a lot of debate around alien involvement in ancient Egypt, and aside from the eternal debate of if aliens helped build the pyramids, hieroglyphs depict just about the most suspicious signs of extraterrestrial help. Now, I'll be the first to say that I don't think all hieroglyphs point towards ancient alien invasion, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a few that raise an eyebrow. One in particular is a hieroglyph appearing to show the Egyptians in possession of electricity, which, if that were true, feels like a surefire sign that they were not alone down here. The tableau depicts what appears to be people holding an electric lamp or maybe a light bulb, and believers have not wasted any time adding this to their Rolodex of reasons. And it's not just electricity that ancient Egyptians may have possessed, but other hieroglyphs seem to portray other forms of advanced technology that, in theory, they would have no way of knowing about. Hieroglyphs with a spooky resemblance to helicopters or planes have been found and gone viral, only adding to the mystery of how on earth this could have been something they would possibly know about. Could it be that aliens came down and gave them knowledge to advance their technology? Could the alleged airplane drawings be a UFO they saw in the sky? Conspiracy theorists say absolutely. Coming in at number 6, Dagu. Not every sign of alien life has to do with a UFO sighting. Sometimes the signs are a bit more subtle. Dating back roughly to between the years of 14,000 and 400 BC, ancient Japan was known for crafting small human-like statues out of clay called dagu. These statues usually measure between 4 to 12 inches, and while the exact reason for their construction remains under speculation, there are two main theories. The first is that dagu were created as part of an ancient healing and fertility ritual, which could very well be true. However, the second one is a little more intriguing as it involves aliens. Now, if you take a look at these statues, they don't just look like a normal human statue. They have a strange, bulbous sort of look to them with large beanie baby eyes and kind of appear to be wearing what some have described as a stylized spacesuit. That, along with the helmeted head, has created a ton of speculation around if they were in fact modeled after aliens who visited ancient Japan and made contact with its inhabitants. I suppose we might never know for sure, but it's definitely an interesting theory. Coming in at number 5, Wandjina. For a long time, a lot of indigenous culture was passed down orally through stories. One of these such stories from Australian Aboriginal mythology talks about spirits named the Wandjina, and as they tell it, the Wandjina came down from the sky and created the earth as well as all of its inhabitants. Then, when the spirit found the place they would die, they painted their image on cave walls and entered a nearby watering hole. These paintings were then refreshed by indigenous people as a method of generating their life force. But what is intriguing about this tale in particular is that these spirits are depicted all over in the form of ancient rock paintings and appear to date back about 4,000 years. Plus, around the heads of the Wandjina are lines or blocks of color seemingly depicting lightning coming out of their helmets, which I mean is definitely a little suspicious. And many believers have been quick to point out the acute resemblance to the description of greys given by alleged alien abductees. If you don't know, greys are pretty much the classic depiction of an alien and are thought to be one of the extraterrestrial races, with UFOologists claiming they make up about 40% of reported abductions and sightings in the US. But could greys have come down, created life on Earth, and then disappeared into the night? I mean, maybe. Who knows? Coming in at number 4, a flaming shield. Similarly to the Roman historical report, other cultures too recorded significant happenings, and the Annales Lauricenses Maiores, which recorded much of history between 680 AD and 829 AD in what is now modern-day Germany, is definitely filled with some mysterious and interesting stories. One tale in particular took place during the time where battalions of Saxon soldiers were attacking, and it details as the attack progressed, suddenly a bizarre object appeared in the skies overhead. The potential UFO was described as the likeness of 2 large flaming shields, reddish in color and appearing as though it was floating in the skies above them. Apparently the object was so frightening that the advancing Saxon army abandoned the fight and retreated back to safety, something that would have been incredibly unusual for them. Now, the only hole to poke in this is that the author is unknown, but it is widely accepted that writers of the time would record events as they happened, and that these stories would be compiled at a later date into the finished work. So just because we don't know who wrote it doesn't mean we don't know for sure it didn't happen. Coming in at number 3, lizard people. One of the wildest conspiracies out there is the belief that there is a race of half human, half lizard people that are taking over the world. Now, I will admit, this one is a little trickier for me to get behind for several reasons. However, after finding out about this piece of the puzzle, I am definitely a little curious. Although the conspiracy wasn't popularized until the 1990s, in the beginning of the 20th century, archaeologist Harry Reginald Hall made an unsettling discovery that definitely brought up a lot of questions. The archaeological site in question is referred to as Tal al-Ubaid and has served as a gold mine for ancient artifacts. However, by far, the strangest uncovered artifacts have to be the multiple series of lizard humanoid statues found by Harry in 1919. From what archaeologists can deduce, they don't appear to represent gods, as they aren't depicted in ceremonious poses, and so it has led many to believe they could be early depictions of the race of lizard people. I mean, I won't lie, these little statues are super creepy, and maybe one of the only times the lizard people theory has got me feeling a little suspicious. I don't know, do you think these figurines really could be proof of the evil lizard race invading the planet? Coming in at number 2, an alien mummy? Mummies are everywhere in Egypt, so while they are definitely interesting, they rarely cause any kind of huge excitement in the archaeological community, unless it's a particularly special one. Well, as I'm sure you've put together at this point, a few years ago, Dr. Victor Lubeck, who was a retired professor from the University of Pennsylvania, uncovered a strange mummy that made him question what he was seeing. Discovered in a small pyramid near Senusret II's pyramid was the mummy of a small, unidentified creature with seemingly no resemblance to that of a human body or known animal. To make things even more strange, buried along with the humanoid mummy were unusual objects Victor was unable to identify. What was clear was that whatever this was mummified with great respect and care, and an inscription was found on the tomb that roughly translates to star or sent from heaven. The running conspiracy theory is that it was an alien who was involved in some way with advising the pharaoh Senusret II, which would explain his royal treatment and careful mummification. I mean, it's definitely unsettling and absolutely an unusual find, but is it an alien? I mean, I guess it could be. And last up today on our number 1 spot, the Sumerian civilization. The ancient Sumerians were a group of people that suddenly became established in Mesopotamia circa 2900 BCE. No one is quite sure where they came from originally, but there is a general conspiracy that is well documented that their origins were not from planet Earth. According to a series of ancient texts, the Sumerians were created by an alien race called the Anunnaki, who came to Earth after their planet Nibiru collided with another planet in the solar system. The aliens found themselves in a short supply of gold and saw that Earth was in high supply, so they landed here and supposedly created a new species that was half alien, half human to mine the gold for them. Now, It does sound a little crazy, but the Sumerians did have advanced scientific, agricultural, and technological knowledge, as well as an acute understanding of the solar system, which was highly advanced at their time. Researchers have recorded clay pot batteries that still contained electrodes, a flyable model airplane, as well as an unexplainable capability to cut large stones with exact precision. Not to mention, similarly to the Egyptians, Sumerians seemed familiar and depicted drawings of rockets, airplanes, and helicopters on certain artifacts from their time too. And if that didn't make you even just a bit curious, they have also discovered mitochondrial DNA evidence linked to a woman in Africa dating more than 100,000 years ago near a gold mine. While of course we might never know for sure, the legend of the Anunnaki has made even some of the biggest skeptics question the reality of aliens.
Number 10, James Webb and the Big Bang. Okay, here we go. We'll kick off with some recent news. The James Webb Space Telescope has of course been blowing our minds casually for a couple years now. Since his departure up into space back in 2021, James Webb Space Telescope has been showing us these beautiful displays that we never dreamt of ever seeing. Stars so faint and so far away that until this point, well, we had no idea they were even there. For example, last week the James Webb Space Telescope found new, well rather old, galaxies that look like tiny red spots. Now, by analyzing the light emitted by these galaxies, astronomers can conclude that these galaxies were born 500 to 700 million years after the Big Bang. Now, these galaxies shouldn't be this old this far away, considering they were born so soon after the Big Bang. Doesn't make any sense. Shouldn't be there. Shouldn't be that old. It's like seeing your grandma younger than you somehow. You're like, no. Timeline-wise, that shouldn't make any sense. What in the Avengers is going on? Are these aliens before the Big Bang? We have no idea. This is a week ago. Comment your thoughts down below. I think it's aliens for sure. Number 9, ancient Sumerians. All right, we'll go old, but not as old as that red dot. The Mesopotamian civilization was formed in what's now Iraq and Kuwait. Now, these civilizations began around the Neolithic Revolution, so somewhere around 12,000 BCE. Now, they're sometimes referred to as the cradle of civilization because, of course, they're old. Mesopotamia was one of the first places to develop agriculture, being right in the middle of Egyptian and the Indus Valley civilizations. And of course, we have to mention these ancient Sumerian tablets. Now, in these tablets, we start to question history. In 1842, British archaeologist Austin Henry Layard discovered ruins of this royal archive. Thousands of tablets made of clay. The world's oldest overdue library books, pretty much. Now, these tablets showed Sumerians engaging in a social night with a scene that depicts a banquet from around 26,000 BC. It was the world's first bender, actually, if I'm being historically accurate. Ancient gods in Mesopotamia were said to have wings and the ability to control all of humanity. These gods were 8 feet tall, or they could have been aliens from another planet. Again, we don't know. Could be gods, could be aliens, could be neither. Drawings of a very tall man, like me, who knows. The Sumerians wrote one of the oldest tales in human history. It's called the Epic of Gilgamesh. So maybe these alien gods inspired them and inspired literature. Who knows? I'd probably write a book if 8-foot-tall winged gods landed on my crops for sure. I'd write a journal or two. Number 8, the Madonna with Saint Giovanni. All right, going back to some art for this one. In our history, even in our ancient history, there have been writings and paintings of the, well, potential extraterrestrial variety. As one example shows, the 15th century painting, the Madonna with the Saint Giovanni, depicts the Virgin Mary. Also, in the background of this painting, features some sort of hovering disc-like object that looks, well, it looks a lot like a UFO. No? I don't know. I can't really describe this. This isn't the only example, however, as we've seen other sorts of otherworldly beings in ancient cave paintings and other Sanskrit scrolls. There are even some people who swear that it's also written in the book of Ezekiel. Aliens are pretty OG. It certainly says something that potential alien sightings have existed since, well, that far back in our human history, so it must either point to proof of alien existence or just humans being obsessed with conspiracies of alien existence. I'm on the latter side. I really want aliens to be real, but I don't think so. I don't know. Number 7, the Nazca Lines. We've all heard of alien crop circles at one point or another. I remember watching the movie Signs when I was younger, and well, then I couldn't sleep for 28 years. That's awesome. That birthday party scene? Never again. Thank you so much. Yeah, that scene. Remember that one? So scary, right? Aliens. Just 200 miles southeast of Peru, we can find hundreds of markings etched into the earth. Now, they're massive pieces of art, almost like crop circles, but, you know, without the farming stuff. More intimidating, more, you know, stone. The biggest ground graffiti spans over 1,200 feet, and you've probably seen it, hopefully not. Many believe that this was an ancient ritual for water. Given its location, well, that theory certainly checks out. Another theory written in 1968 in Eric von Daniken's book, Chariot of the Gods, suggests that ancient Nazca Lines was a site for ancient alien visitors. Like a landing pad almost. Airport, there it is, one of those. Leaving behind knowledge in the form of these massive doodles and, well, technology. Number 6, the USS Nimitz. Alright, I couldn't imagine a worse place to find alien life than in the middle of the ocean. Ugh, that's creepy. Although I will argue that an octopus is completely alien. That's messed up. They shouldn't exist. November 2004, the USS Princeton is a part of the USS Nimitz strike group, and they noted this craft, a UFO, a UAP rather, that's what they're calling them now, UAP. Now at first they saw this craft not in the sky, but under the sea, which is interesting because the Go Fast video that we've always been looking at with that thing whipping through the air seems like it's coming from the ocean. The ocean is very unexplored, so there could be a plethora of aliens just waiting down there. Who knows? I certainly hope not, but who knows? A few moments later, this white tic-tac shaped alien craft came out of the water, and a white tic-tac shaped UAP, always egg-shaped in history, that's always a fun sign. Then 2 FA-18 fighter jets were flying above it, and as earlier reports put the egg 80,000 feet above the water, so of course that's when they had to fly in. They saw it fly up, whip through the air, and then again, they saw it dip into the ocean with no exhaust, no infrared, didn't pick up anything, nothing like that at all. It just shot away at 3 times the speed of sound, underwater, gone. Can aliens go underwater too? That's a little bit OP, it's not fair. Number 5, Oumuamua. This one here has scientists and Reddit users all fighting alike. So just a few years ago, scientists all agreed that we had found an object that was flying through our solar system, and they called it Oumuamua. It was widely agreed upon that it was an interstellar comet that had somehow swung out from another star and ended up near us at a very high velocity. But upon closer examination, they realized that something was propelling this and causing it to accelerate, and this is when the debate started. Avi Loeb, who is a Harvard University astrophysicist, proposed the idea that rather than a comet, this could be an alien probe that is being pushed by a light sail. A light sail is a very wide but extremely thin piece of material that could be accelerating this, space cigar. Other scientists didn't agree with this, fair, I mean more than fair, and instead they believed that this is possibly the hydrogen ice could have been melting off the object in a way that would mimic a rocket or something that can propel it in nature. But in August of last year, Avi wrote in a study that hydrogen ice is too easily heated and it would have melted off long before it reached our solar system. So really don't know what's propelling this massive space cigar. So we think aliens. Do I think aliens? Maybe. I don't know. I'll never tell. Number 4, Flaming Thing, Texas. I just watched Nope the other day, and the idea of aliens in Texas or aliens over top of a farm, that birthday party scene with the dude walking, it always gives me chills. I don't like it. Aliens love a good crop, apparently. Imagine opening the newspaper though in 1957, and right on the front cover you read, Levelin Flaming Thing brings world knocking at city's door. What does that even mean? How do I react to that? Back in 1957 in, of course, Levelin, Texas, multiple eyewitness reports began to flood in about an egg-shaped object, again, an egg-shaped object, or this circular flash of light. It was just jetting across Levelin skies. One witness recalls the object making a loud humming noise as it flew by, which is different than other accounts that we've heard about, flying eggs in history. But this egg shape keeps coming back up. But this is an encounter where it's been reported as loud with a great rush of wind, which is, again, very different. Believable, but different. It was a loud egg as opposed to a quiet sea egg. On top of that claim, the witness's car radio began to go haywire as it passed. The radio thing isn't too crazy. I mean, growing up, my computer speakers would always tell me if a text was going to come in. It's always so odd. I have no idea how that works still to this day. The Air Force ended up commenting on it. They said that this was just a phenomenon caused by electrical storms and not a space egg passing by. But do we buy that? Is that why we're here right now watching this video, our most amazing top 10, giving it a thumbs up, subscribing? We want to believe in aliens, right? Let's do it. Let's move on. Almost there. Number 3, Europa. One of Jupiter's many moons, called Europa, has a red tinge to it. And in 2001, NASA scientists revealed that this tinge, this little might be possible that alien microbes are responsible for this reddish color. Again, we saw life way out in the galaxy that was also a faint red, so red means dead? I don't know, red means alive? Who knows? The surface of this moon is mostly ice, but it has been shown that it reflects infrared radiation in a bizarre way. This means that something is binding it together, but researchers haven't been able to come up with the correct combination of elements and or compounds to make that data make any sense. They're like, something's red and there's life. Well, I don't know how science works. That's my best impersonation of science people. There's some bacteria on Earth that can thrive in extreme conditions and that also have that red and brown color, which could potentially be responsible for this color on the moon. Sort of space bacteria, ice bacteria, whatever. There's something living up there. The surface temperature might be too cold for them to survive, but the warmer interior might be where these are all located. Some geological activity on the moon could push them closer to the surface, where they then flash frozen in place. So they're warm under the water, then they go, huh, and they freeze. That's a horrible way to go out. little space bacteria. Number 2, O'Hare Airport. A UAP spotted in the airport. Worst place to see it, in my opinion. Are you sure it wasn't an airplane? Heard there's a few over there. The day was November 7th and the year was 2006. Flight 446 was gearing up with passengers and luggage, of course, ready to fly to North Carolina from Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. But the flight was a tad delayed due to the hovering metallic craft hovering above all the planes. Yeah, can't really take off when that shiny ball's in the way. 12 United employees and others were just there to fly out. It was 4:15 p.m., so it wasn't at midnight. Nobody was tired. Nobody was delirious. It was clear as day. It was a business day, otherwise. And everyone saw this. Witnesses watched it hover for around 5 minutes before it eventually zipped off back into the sky. It even pushed through clouds, so people say it wasn't a balloon. This report was one of the most read stories on the Chicago Tribune's website. I mean, of course, it's about aliens. But eventually it was deemed a weather phenomenon, because, why, of course it was, wasn't it? The UFO was not seen on the radar, or any radar for that matter, so now we're just gonna go off what people said that many years ago. Although last week we saw 3 balloons and have no idea what they were, so we'll never find out at this rate. And finally, number 1, 2021 UFO. February 21st, 2021, a blogger was using a radio scanner to try and pick up the feed from an aircraft, but they received much more than they ever expected. They intercepted the transmission of the wrong aircraft, but at the right time, it seems. As an American Airlines flight was headed from Cincinnati to Phoenix around 1:20 p.m., the pilot came on the radio to ask a question. Do we have any targets up here? Also, what an odd question to ask while you're flying. The voice continued, we just had something go right over top of us. Now after this, he followed up with, I hate to say this, but it looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast over top of us flying. Yeah, not where you want to see anything in the air around you. You don't want to see anything that looks like that in the air. No, that's so scary. Not only were FAA air traffic controllers not able to see any object in the area on their radar scope, but they still haven't been able to identify what that could have been. Just a rogue something flying by. Nice, that's calming. Glad I went flying yesterday. This does happen more often than any of us really know. Like I said, we had 3 balloons pop up and we have no idea where half of them went or what happened to them. But it's possible this object could have been part of some sort of covert military or Navy operation, but it certainly raises some alarm bells. We don't want to do any tests beside a swoosh airline. Probably not dangerous. Dangerous? Probably not safe. Do we believe in aliens? Comment down below. What are these balloons that are approaching? I don't know. I have no idea what's real anymore.
Number 10, Pisces and Aries radio signal. A radio signal was received 3 times from the same region of space in February 2003. Astronomers with the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence (SETI) project used a massive telescope in Puerto Rico to re-examine 200 sections of the sky, which had all previously yielded unexplained radio signals. These signals had all disappeared except for one, which had become stronger. The signal's widely thought to be the best candidate yet for alien contact and comes from a spot between the constellations Pisces and Aries, where there are no obvious stars or planets. Curiously, the signal is at one of the frequencies that hydrogen, the most common element, absorbs and emits energy. Some astronomers believe that this is a very likely frequency at which aliens wishing to be noticed would transmit. Nevertheless, there's still a good chance the signal is from a never seen before natural phenomenon, but I'd like to think that it's aliens. Number 9, mysterious beam of energy. In December 2020, researchers announced that they had captured a very mysterious beam of energy in the radio part of the electromagnetic spectrum at 980 MHz, coming from the closest star to our own. Proxima Centauri, which is just 4.2 light years away, hosts one gas giant and one rocky world 17% larger than Earth that happens to be in its star's habitable zone, meaning liquid water could exist there. The unexplained signal reportedly shifted slightly while it was being observed in a way that resembled the shift caused by the movement of a planet. Researchers are excited but cautious, explaining that they will need to figure out if more mundane sources, such as a comet, hydrogen cloud, or even human technology, could be mimicking an alien signal, and that it will likely take time before they know one way or another if aliens are contacting us. Number 8, Milky Way signal. On April 28, 2020, 2 ground-based radio telescopes detected an intense pulse of radio waves within the Milky Way. It was the first time an FRB had ever been detected within our galaxy, and despite only lasting a millisecond, it was almost impossible to miss. Located just 300,000 light years away from Earth, the FRB was picked up by the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment, CHIME, and the Survey for Transient Astronomical Radio Emission 2, STARE there too. Chime wasn't even looking in the right direction, and we still saw it loud and clear in our peripheral vision, said Kyoshu Masu, assistant professor of physics at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Stare 2 also saw it, and it's only a set of a few radio antennae literally made out of cake pans. April 2020's discovery was also notable for being the most energetic radio blast that astronomers have recorded in the Milky Way. But what made it most exciting is that scientists are now closer to determining origin of FRBs. They've been billions of light years away, making them a lot harder to study, but now there's one close by. Number 7. Mysterious signals from a distant galaxy. The Chime Observatory found 13 FRBs, and among it was a very unusual repeating signal coming from the same source about 1.5 billion light years away. Such an event has only been reported once before by a different telescope. Knowing that there is another suggests that there could be more life out there, said Ingrid Stairs, an astrophysicist from the University of British Columbia. And with more repeaters and more sources available to study, we may be able to understand these cosmic puzzles, where they're from, and what causes them. The telescope detected 13 of the radio bursts almost immediately, including the repeater. The research has now been published in the journal Nature. We have discovered a second repeater, and its properties are very similar to the first repeater. This tells us more about the properties of the repeater as a population, said Sir Harsh Tendulkar of McGill University, Canada. Number 6. Star closest to the sun radio signal. An as yet unexplained radio signal appears to be coming from the direction of the star closest to the sun, a small red star roughly 4.2 light years away called Proxima Centauri. Adding to the excitement, at least 2 planets orbit this star, one of which might be a temperate and rocky like Earth. Breakthrough Listen, a decade-long search for alien broadcasts from the nearest million stars, was using Australia's Parkes Observatory to study Proxima Centauri when the team detected the signal, which they dubbed BLC-1. The radio waves were picked up in observations made between April and May 2019. While processing those observations in the summer, Shane Smith, an undergraduate from Hillside College in Michigan working with Breakthrough, spotted BLC-1 apparently radiating from the star. Although the signal is faint, BLC-1 passed all the tests the Breakthrough team uses to filter out millions of signals generated by humans. It was narrow in bandwidth, appeared to drift in frequency, and disappeared when the telescope shifted its gaze from Proxima to a different object. Over the following days, 4 similar signals appeared, although some have been ruled out as radio interference. It's pretty expected that every now and then you'll see something weird, but this is interesting because it's something that's weird and that we have to think about the next steps, says Sophia Sky, a graduate student at Pennsylvania State University and the Breakthrough team member leading the signal analysis. Number 5. Farthest radio signal from a galaxy. Astronomers using a radio telescope in India have captured the most distant ever radio signal from a galaxy. This signal came from a galaxy called SDSS J0826 plus 5630 that exists 8.8 billion light years away. That essentially means that it exists closer to the Big Bang than any other galaxy previously detected using radio astronomy. A galaxy emits different kinds of radio signals, said Arnab Chakraborty, a postdoctoral researcher who studies cosmology at the Department of Physics at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. Until now, it's only been possible to capture this particular signal from a galaxy nearby, limiting our knowledge to those galaxies closer to Earth. The researchers from both Montreal and India used the giant meter wave radio telescope in Pune, India, to capture the signal at a specific wavelength called the 21 centimeter line. The signal from the galaxy was emitted when the universe was only 4.9 billion years old, but because the universe is expanding, it took 8.8 billion years to reach the telescope. Wow. This breakthrough proves that it's possible to observe faraway galaxies using low-frequency radio telescopes. This will help us understand the composition of galaxies at a much greater distance from Earth, said Arnab. Number 4. Radio signal heartbeat. Astronomers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology have picked up repetitive radio signals from a galaxy billions of light years from Earth. Scientists have not been able to pinpoint the exact location of the radio waves yet, but the signals have been occurring firing steadily and last up to 3 seconds. Most fast radio bursts, or the FRBs, only last a few milliseconds. Within this window, the team detected bursts of radio waves that repeated every 0.2 seconds in a clear periodic pattern similar to a beating heart, MIT said in a statement. On December 21, 2019, researcher at the Dominion Radio Astrophysical Observatory in British Columbia, Canada, picked up signal of a potential FRB according to the MIT statement. Not only was it very long, lasting about 3 seconds, but there were periodic peaks that were remarkably precise, emitting every fraction of a second, boom boom boom, like a heartbeat, said Danielle Michelli, a postdoctoral researcher in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Calvi Institute for Astrophysics and Space Research. This is the first time the signal itself is periodic. Data on the bursts, including their frequency and how they change based on where the source is located in proximity to Earth, could help researchers determine at what speed the universe is expanding. Number 3. Bright, quick blasts of radio waves. Repeating bursts of energy seem to be coming from an ancient group of stars called a globular cluster, which is among the last places astronomers expected to find them. Often originating billions of light years away, the extremely bright, extremely brief bursts of radio waves, known as the fast radio bursts, have defied explanation since they were first spotted in 2007. Based on observations to date, scientists surmise that the bursts are powered by young, short-lived cosmic objects. But a fast radio burst discovered has now been traced to a globular cluster about 11.7 million light-years away near the neighboring spiral galaxy M81. To put it in perspective, finding this burst among a cluster of aging stars is kind of like finding a smartphone embedded in the Stonehenge. The observation doesn't make sense. Brian Gainsler, an astronomer from the University of Toronto, said this is definitely not a place where fast radio bursts are expected to live. Scientists are struggling to explain the cosmic anchurism. They're also moving toward the conclusion that maybe, as with many other celestial phenomena, there are multiple ways to cook up a fast radio burst. Number 2. Bursts of energy. While mapping radio waves across the universe, astronomers found a celestial object releasing giant bursts of energy, unlike anything they have ever seen before. The spinning space object, spotted in March 2018, beamed out radiation 3 times per hour. In those moments, it became the brightest source of radio waves viewable from Earth, acting like a celestial lighthouse. A study on the discovery was published in the journal Nature. Lead study author Natasha Hurley-Walker, an astrophysicist at the Curtin University node of the International Center for Radio Astronomy Research, said this object was appearing and disappearing over a few hours during our observations. That was completely unexpected. It was kind of spooky for an astronomer because there's nothing known in the sky that does that, and it's really quite close to us, about 4,000 light years away. It's in our galactic backyard. Curtin University doctoral student Tyrone O'Doherty made the unusual discovery while using the Murchison-Wilford Array, aka the MWA telescope in the outback of Western Australia. Tyrone said, "It's exciting that the source I identified last year has turned out to be such a particular object. The MWA's wide field of view and extreme sensitivity are perfect for surveying the entire sky and detecting the unexpected." And coming in at number 1, the WOW signal. In 1997, astronomer Jerry Amen was researching at the Ohio State University when an incredible and unexplainable radio signal was detected using the school's Big Ear telescope. In those days, information was run through what was called an IBM 1130 mainframe computer before being printed on paper and then studied by hand. Upon reviewing his findings, Jerry came across something he had never seen before. There, in a vertical column, was the sequence 6EQUJ5. Jerry was amazed and immediately circled the sequence and wrote "wow" right beside it, hence the name. The signal they picked up had come from nearly 220 million light years away, and there was no explanation as to how or why a radio signal could be detected from that distance. It immediately became a sensation in both the science community and the rest of the world, and was used to support the search for alien life in the universe. Jerry himself says he's convinced that it certainly has the potential to be the first signal from extraterrestrial intelligence.
Starting off off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Lake Huron UFO. Just this past weekend, on Sunday, February 12th, US officials were able to confirm that the Air Force and the National Guard had downed a UFO that was seen over Lake Huron, which has a shoreline that is shared by the US state Michigan as well as the Canadian province of Ontario, where I am right now. Representative Alyssa Slotkin, a Michigan Democrat, not only confirmed the downing, but also took to Twitter to write, quote, "Great work by all who carried out this mission both in the air and back at headquarters. We're all interested in exactly what this object was and its purpose." Of course, this only worked to fuel rumors over what exactly this UFO could actually be or where it came from. The Department of Defense is said to have been tracking the flying object for some time before it decided that action needed to be taken in order to get the object out of airspace. So far, while there still hasn't been any confirmations of what exactly this object was, it has been described as a, quote, octagonal structure. Right now, recovery efforts of the debris is underway, but as of filming this, there have been no official reports of what exactly this UFO might have been or where it came from. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Yukon UFO. On Saturday, February 11th, just a day before the Lake Huron UFO, a US fighter jet shot down this unidentified flying object that was in the skies above Yukon, a Canadian territory. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau took to Twitter to let Canadians know that he had ordered the, quote, takedown of an unidentified object that violated Canadian airspace. In an effort to take down the UFO, both Canadian and US aircrafts were scrambled, and Air Force members took to the sky to execute the successful downing of the object. Canadian forces are now working to recover and analyze the wreckage of this UFO to hopefully identify its origin. The North American Aerospace Defense Command, also known as NORAD, had initially detected the object flying at a high altitude over Alaska on Friday evening, and on Saturday is when it crossed into Canadian airspace. Pentagon Press Secretary Brigadier General Pat Ryder explained that, quote, a US F-22 shot down the object in Canadian territory using an AIM-9X missile following close coordination between US and Canadian authorities. Both Canadians and Americans are on high alert with this UFO, considering it is just one of the many that have been taken out of airspace in the last couple weeks alone. Like I mentioned before, right now the Canadian Armed Forces and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are working on recovering the wreckage, but the FBI will also be working closely with the RCMP during the investigation. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Alaska UFO. Okay, we're doing like a reverse timeline for these few points because now we are talking about the Alaska UFO that was shot down one day before the Yukon UFO. It was like Alaska, Yukon, Lake Huron. On February 10th, an F-22 US fighter jet shot down an unidentified object over the waters near Alaska. The object was said to have been caught flying at an altitude of 40,000 feet and was deemed a, quote, reasonable threat to aviation, which is why the orders were given to take it down. The object was first detected the day before, and a flyby happened on the Thursday it was seen, before the second flyby and takedown which took place on the Friday. Here's where things get really suspicious though. The pilots who were sent up to investigate and take down the UFO all gave differing reports of what it was that they saw. Some of the pilots even say that the UFO interfered with their sensors, and others claimed that they couldn't see any kind of propulsion system on the object, which poses the question, how could it have possibly been just casually cruising 40,000 feet in the air? In a statement over the weekend, the US Northern Command said that they have no new information about the object's, quote, capabilities, purpose, or origin, and they also explained that the recovery efforts are being slowed down by the icy conditions in the region. The National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, John Kirby, said of the object, quote, we're calling this an object because that's the best description we have right now. He continued to say, quote, we don't know who owns it, whether it's state-owned or corporate-owned or privately owned, we just don't know. People are especially concerned about this UFO in particular because of the important military sites in Alaska, as well as its very close proximity to its neighboring countries. In our number 7 spot today, we have the balloon. On February 4th, it became public knowledge that officials were monitoring a strange object in the sky that they claimed had entered airspace above Alaska on January 28. They monitored the object as it later drifted from Idaho southeast to the Carolinas before the decision was made to take it down. This operation was carried out and the object was shot down. As it turns out, this object was realized to be some kind of a balloon. The balloon is said to have been about the size of 3 buses, and it was flying at an altitude of around 60,000 to 65,000 feet. Authorities were able to discover that the origin of this object was from China, but there are conflicting accounts of what its purpose might have been. China has maintained that the device was a civilian aircraft that strayed into American airspace, but senior American officials officials are seemingly believing that the balloon was originally supposed to conduct surveillance. Many believe that the spying was to be done over US military bases in Guam and Hawaii, but winds carried it off course to Alaska, Canada, and finally the United States mainland, where it was then shot down. Whatever this balloon was for, I'm just glad that we know what this one was and where it had come from, because some of these other recent UFOs are just too mysterious. In our number 6 spot today, we have the classified report. We are just scratching the surface of our time in 2023, but already there are some crazy announcements, including one regarding a report that was delivered to Congress from the Director of National Intelligence. Basically, since August of last year, there has been a total of 510 quote unidentified aerial phenomena observed in protected airspace or near sensitive facilities. According to the report, 26 of these were described as drones, 163 were labeled as balloons or balloon-like entities, and 6 were described as clutter, whatever that means. This is all fine and well, but the concern sets in when we consider that this leaves 171 sightings unaccounted for, some of which, quote, appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities. It's also important to note that the majority of these sightings are coming directly from Navy and Air Force pilots. Here's the thing, what we as the public know is only a 12-page declassified summary of the actual real secret report that was delivered to Congress. Only time will tell if we ever find out what the rest of the report includes or what will happen with further investigation into the 171 sightings, but hopefully if answers do arise, one day we'll find out. In our number 5 spot today, we have the 2021 UFO. On February 21st of 2021, a blogger was using a radio scanner to try and pick up from an aircraft when he received much more than he ever expected. He intercepted the transmission of the wrong aircraft, but at the right time. As an American Airlines flight was headed from Cincinnati to Phoenix around 1:19 p.m., the pilot came on the radio to ask the question, "Do you have any targets up here? We just had something go right over top of us." After this, he followed up with, "I hate to say this, but it looked like a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast right over the top of us." Not only were FAA air traffic controllers not able to see any object in the area on their radar scope, but they still have been unable to identify exactly what it could have been. This does happen more often than any of us really know, and it is possible that the object could have been a part of some covert military or Navy operation, but it certainly raises some alarm bells that it was unable to be tracked in any sort of capacity. I wonder if this is one of those stories that will remain a mystery, or if one day we'll get some sort of answers as to what exactly happened here. In our number 4 spot today, we have the 2023 sighting. This UFO video was taken recently on January 22nd, and the video was posted to Reddit by a user called MaxKeller96, and with the video, they gave some context. Quote, "My sister, dad, and I were out hiking near Picket Post when one of us noticed something glimmering near the mountain, so we stopped to look at it. All I could really make out is that it was a small bright dot in the sky. After a good 15 seconds of staring at it, just silently hanging in the air, trying to figure out what the was, I started recording. Sorry it's shaky, I could barely see my phone screen and was trying to get a good look at it with my own eyes. It then dropped 2 flare-looking things, though my sister swears she counted at least 3, and then it instantly sped off, heading south-ish. Up until that point, I thought it might have been a helicopter or a drone, as there's a lot of military/Air Force base stuff out here, but there's no way anything can accelerate that fast. We all lost sight of it nearly instantly after video cuts, and we were all properly freaked out about it. I've replayed the video probably 100 times and tried showing it to everyone I know, and no one had any idea what it could be other than a super high-end drone. If you think you know, please let me know. After watching the video also probably 100 times, I can definitely say that I have no idea what they all saw that day, because I also really don't think it was a drone. I also have to say that this video even gathered people together on Reddit, and that is no easy feat. Redditors are ruthless, and often very skeptical, and still people are pretty on board and confused over what this could have been. In our number 3 spot today, we have the USS Princeton UFO. This UFO sighting comes from 2004, but footage of it was released in 2017. On November 14th of 2004, the USS Princeton noticed an unknown aircraft of some sort that was about 100 miles off of the coast of San Diego. For 2 weeks prior to this crew had been tracking a strange flying object that would start out around 80,000 feet before extremely quickly dropping to hover right above the Pacific Pacific Ocean. Black Aces Commander David Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Jim Slate of Strike Fighter Squadron 41 went over in 2 fighter jets in order to kind of scope out the situation, and when they arrived, they saw what at first appeared to be churning water while there was an oval shape just below the surface. After this, a white oval-shaped object appeared above the water, but it had no markings on it, like no windows, nothing that would indicate an engine, no wings, and the infrared monitors on the jets didn't pick up any sort of exhaust, which is especially peculiar when we think of what the pilots who just shot down the Alaska UFO said. No propulsion, right? Gives me chills just thinking about it, because how could that be possible? The commander and lieutenant commander tried to intercept this strange aircraft, but it very quickly flew away and reappeared on the monitor 60 miles away. Like, when I say quickly, I mean it was moving at 3 times the speed of sound and over twice the speed of the fighter jets. Faster than any kind of technology we currently have. We still don't know exactly what this was, because it definitely seems like we don't have the technology to make this sort of thing possible. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Chicago UFO. This UFO sighting comes from November 7th, 2006, and it was at the O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. Flight 446 was getting ready to head to North Carolina when an employee from United Airlines that was on the tarmac noticed a dark gray metallic aircraft hovering over one of the gates. After this, 11 other employees and even a few people who didn't work there saw this gray saucer floating at around 4:15 p.m. The people who saw it explained that it hovered above the gate for about 5 minutes before it just shot itself upwards and broke through the clouds, leaving a hole in the clouds where you could see the blue sky through. The strangest thing, however, is that this flying saucer did not show up on the radar, so the Federal Aviation Administration just called it a weather phenomena and would not investigate it, despite there being around 15 witnesses who all saw exactly the same thing. This story did, however, become one of the most read stories on the Chicago Tribune's website, and even went international because it certainly is very interesting. And finally, in our number 1 spot, we have the Stephenville UFO. In January of 2008, in the small town of Stephenville, Texas, a bunch of residents all saw something in the sky that they couldn't believe. In the beginning, it appeared to be white lights in the sky that were first in a single arc, but then they quickly moved to form 2 parallel lines. It was estimated that the lights were spanning about a mile long and half a mile wide. Craziest part is that it was flying at 3,000 miles per hour, which is similar to the speed of a fighter jet, but there was no sound reported at all. The government chalked this sighting up to the US Air Force flight operation, but many of the residents who saw this event on that day were absolutely not convinced and truly felt like they were lied to. Some even explained that what they saw was too technologically advanced for the human civilization.
Starting off this countdown, we have the New Jersey Turnpike. On July 14th, 2001, tons of individuals stopped in awe as they saw strange orange and yellow lights in a V formation in the sky. It was just after midnight when these mysterious lights appeared. They were so strange that a number of drivers stopped along the highway to look at the sky. Apparently, these lights lasted for around 15 minutes before disappearing. Daniel Tarrant, who worked for the police department, was one of the many witnesses of this bizarre event. And apparently over a dozen calls were made to the local police department reporting these lights. It definitely freaked a lot of people out. Now, what's even freakier is that air traffic controllers said that it's impossible for airplanes or jets or space flights to have made that light. So that's just ruled completely out. To this day, we still don't know what the mystery light show was. But of course, it's probably aliens. Coming in at number 9, we have the Pentagon footage.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
So in April of last year, the Pentagon released footage of what they said was an unidentified flying object. These videos were recorded back in 2004 and 2015, but were only finally released when they thought it was safe to do so. So in one of the videos, you can see what appears to be a UFO flying in the sky. It was taken by naval aviators, and it shows some sort of objects moving through the sky. In the video, you can hear the pilots are in shock at what they're seeing. In fact, one of the pilots that witnessed this phenomena and captured it on video told CNN that the disc moved in ways he couldn't explain. Apparently 1 second it was there, and then next thing you know, it disappeared. He said, and I quote, "As I got close to it, it rapidly accelerated to the south and disappeared in less than 2 seconds. This was extremely abrupt, like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall. It would hit and go the other way." Now that's pretty creepy if you ask me. Then play 18 seconds to 30 seconds.
Look at that thing, dude.
8, we have the O'Hare Airport saucer. On November 6 of 2006, 12 employees at the O'Hare International Airport in Chicago witnessed a saucer-shaped craft outside of the airport. Several other people outside of the airport saw this as well. It occurred at around 4:15 p.m. that day. Witnesses say that the UFO hovered in the sky for about 5 minutes before shooting upward. When it did this, it created a big hole in the clouds. Airport employees claim that this was no way an airplane. The object was dark gray in color and around 6 to 24 feet in diameter. Some say it looked like a frisbee, it was just spinning in the sky, but others claim it wasn't rotating, it was just hovering. What's even weirder is how the object was very quiet. Again, to this day, no one knows what on earth it was that they saw. Maybe because it wasn't from Earth. And at number 7, we have the Maury Island incident. This one is crazy. Like, I don't even know what to believe anymore. So on June 27th, 1947, a man named Harold Dahl, his young son, and his dog went out on a conservation mission. While out on the fishing boat, they saw 6 donut-shaped aircrafts hovering in the air above them. The crafts then started dropping weird molten-type waste onto the lake. He described it as if it was raining lava or white metal. This ended up hitting his son's arm and the dog. The son was badly injured, and sadly the dog didn't survive. After the incident, obviously word got out, and then some man approached Harold saying that he also witnessed something exactly like that. But then Harold was also approached by another guy who he called, like, you know, the Men in Black, and was told not to talk about the incident. So again, pretty freaking creepy. In our 6th spot, we have the Westall UFO. Now, this next UFO sighting was actually talked about on Magellan TV's documentary called Westall 66 Suburban UFO Mystery, another great documentary. So on April 6 of 1966 in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia, a weird UFO was seen flying in the air. This was seen by more than 200 students and teachers at a nearby school. It happened at around 11 a.m. that day. The students and teachers were outside playing sports when they saw this saucer-type object in the sky. It scared a lot of the students and stunned the teachers. They described it as being a silver shiny aircraft with a purple hue to it. Others say it was more green in color. But it was twice the size of a family car. On top of that, some say they saw 1 disc, while others say that they saw 3. This incident was explored by the Victorian Flying Saucer Research Society and Phenomena Research Australia, but they haven't been able to rationalize it. To this day, it's considered one of Australia's major unexplained UFO cases. There's way more to this case than I have time to talk about, so if you want to learn more, then check out the documentary. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the Stephenville sightings. Stephenville is a small and quiet town in Texas. Nothing too crazy happens there, it's mainly just known for its dairy farms. But on January 8th, 2008, something quite strange happened that rocked that quiet town. On this day, dozens of residents saw white lights above Highway 67. A local pilot claimed that the lights, and I quote, spanned about a mile long and a half a mile wide and traveled about 3,000 miles per hour. The lights were accompanied with silence. Now, the US Air Force did claim that it was just a plane flying in the area, but the residents aren't buying this excuse. They said, and I quote, what they saw was too technologically advanced for current human abilities. Coming in at number 4, we have the USS Unknown Craft. In 2004, a Navy missile cruiser picked up some weird radar signals coming from an unknown craft. The cruiser was sailing off the coast of Southern California when this happened. It was coming from an object in the sky. Then apparently at some point the crew saw an oval-shaped object drop into the water. The water began to churn around it. Then a few seconds later the object shot back out of the water and accelerated away. They claim it moved more than 3 times the speed of sound and more than twice the speed of fighter jets. In our 3rd spot, we have Kenneth Arnold. On June 24th, 1947, a private pilot named Kenneth Arnold witnessed something pretty creepy while out flying. So on that day, Kenneth was out flying looking for a US Marine Corps airplane that crashed near Mount Rainier. There was a reward for anyone that could locate the plane. But while out looking, he saw 9 bright lights emitting from a shiny UFO. He claims it was traveling at around 1,200 miles per hour. Of course, if only Arnold Arnold had seen this thing, then people probably wouldn't believe him. But he wasn't the only one to witness it. A man named Fred Johnson also saw the lights and object. That same day, around the same time, he saw the object through his telescope. He also claimed that the object, whatever it was, interfered with his compass. Arnold was just going to dismiss what he saw as a mirage until Johnson came forward explaining he saw it too. In our second spot, we have the Flatwoods Monster. On September 12, 1952, 7 individuals and a dog witnessed a UFO. And then they saw what they believed to be an alien. So on this day, 6 boys aged 10 to 16, a mom and a dog, were at the park playing. While doing so, they saw a pulsing red light flash across the sky and then crash down. 3 of the boys ran to go get one of the boys' mom to then go check it out. The dog followed. When they neared the area where the thing crashed, they saw a 10-foot tall Frankenstein-like monster. That's how they described it. Even the dog was afraid and ran away from it. Apparently this monster had blood red eyes, a green face, and it glowed. It even had claws. One of the boys was so afraid he actually peed his pants. I mean, it would sound fishy if it was just a group of boys that claimed to see a UFO and alien, but then like the mom saw it too and verifies that this story is true. And in our number 1 spot, we have the Berkshire's UFO. This undoubtedly is the most mysterious and scariest UFO sighting and encounter on this list. On September 1st, 1969, something happened that changed the lives of multiple people in Berkshire County forever. So on that day, a bunch of people claimed to have seen a number of strange lights. Some people even claim that they were abducted by this bright light, or randomly time passed and they don't know what happened for the hours lost. One of the people that witnessed this was Melanie Kirchdorfer. That night, her and her family went to a Dairy Queen to get ice cream. Then they went to a nearby lake. While her father backed into the parking lot at the lake, a strange aura came around the car. They don't remember much after that, but Melanie remembers being levitated and then being on a spaceship. Another man named Tom Warner remembers being on the spaceship as well, and remembers seeing Melanie beside him. Before that, they never even knew each other. That same night, Jane and her friend Mary were driving home when they saw several bright lights in front of them. Her and a couple of the other cars actually pulled over because the lights were so bright that they couldn't see where they were driving. When they got out of their car, they saw a huge object floating over the road in front of them. And many other people also shared several stories from that night as well. So it's quite creepy that many people came forward, all random individuals with no relation to each other, but had such similar stories.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the pink see-through Fantasia. While the name of these guys would kind of make someone think that they're like cool and sexy, in reality these guys are definitely not that. The pink see-through Fantasia is a sea cucumber normally found about 1.5 miles deep in the waters of the Celebes Sea, which is located in the western Pacific. These guys were actually discovered only quite recently in 2007, but there's something about them that might either prove that they've been here for much longer, or maybe they had quite the chance to develop their survival skills somewhere else. These guys are able, when frightened, to emit a light through bioluminescence in order to scare off potential predators. This animal of course gets its name through its see-through appearance and pink color, and this is what makes their intestines completely visible to the outside world. In our number 9 spot today we have the vampire squid. The scientific name of these creatures directly translates into vampire squid from hell, and they get their name from their fantastic red color, their glowing eyes, and their webbing in between the arms, which appears as a sort of cloak. Well, that's where the vampire part comes from. The squid part is a little trickier. While the vampire squid shares quality with both squid and octopuses, they don't actually belong to either of these families, and they are instead in a category of their own entirely. In the past, there were more members in this same family, but the vampire squid is now the last remaining member, which is why they are often referred to as a living fossil. In our number 8 spot today we have the leafy sea dragon. These are a creature that are definitely one of the coolest looking on this list. A lot of weird sea creatures tend to look absolutely horrifying, but these ones are most definitely a little easier on the eyes. These fish belong to the family that includes pipefish and seahorses, but they are the only species in their genus. The leafy sea dragon is most commonly found along the southern and western coasts of Australia, and they are very obviously named from their appearance. It would seem as though these guys would use these leafy protrusions to help propel them through the water, but that is not the case, and instead they are merely used as camouflage. These sea dragons are usually quite solitary, but they also have an incredible sense of direction. It was once thought that they didn't travel very far, but it was later discovered that they actually travel several hundred miles, but use this keen sense of direction to return to the same spots, which is actually very cool. In our number 7 spot today, we have the fossil monster. Okay, so as the name would suggest, this isn't a still living creature, and instead is one that has been found in a fossil. These fossils pertaining to one particular creature have only been found in one spot, and they come from a time about 300 million years ago when what is now Illinois was covered in water. Found in the Mason Creek fossil beds, they have found the fossils of an animal called Tullymonstrum gregarium, or simply the Tully monster. What is so unique about these fossils from this creature, other than the fact that it lived 300 million years ago, which is wild, is that attempts at classifying this creature have been highly controversial. Interpretations of this fossil have been likened to mollusks, arthropods, conodonts, worms, and vertebrates. It is super weird that this creature, with fossils located in only one place from 300 million years ago, is super hard to classify because it has a bunch of different attributes that could be placed in a number of different animal classes. I'm not saying it's an alien, I'm just saying it's a little mysterious. In our number 6 spot today, we have the mimic octopus. Octopuses in general are all insane. Like, I fully believe that basically all of them could be from another planet because I just don't understand how they look like that, how they're all so smart, and how they can individually use their little suckers. I don't know. They're just fascinating creatures, and the mimic octopus is no exception. These guys are normally found in the Indo-Pacific, and they get their name from their unbelievable ability to use chromatophores to blend in with their surroundings or perhaps to impersonate another marine animal. Most of the time they use this ability to defend themselves from predators, but they can also be seen using it to help them catch their prey. For example, they might appear as a crab's potential mate before they chomp down on their certainly confused and surprised tasty snack. In our number 5 spot today, we have the peacock mantis shrimp. I mean, need I say more? These guys can be found in the Indian and tropical western Pacific Oceans, and man are they a wondrous sight. They get their peacock name from their fantastic colors, but despite how awesome these candy-colored shrimp are to look at, this actually isn't what they are known best for. These guys are actually best known for their ability to quickly punch with their front 2 appendages, and despite their tiny size, don't underestimate their power. Apparently, this punch is one of the fastest movements in the entire animal kingdom. In fact, it's so fast that it causes enough power to be able to break the glass wall of an aquarium. I mean, they definitely know how to pack a punch. Luckily, they usually save this sort of thing to break open mollusks and help them get through a crab's armor. In our number 4 spot today, we have the colossal squid. The colossal squid is a creature that is not to be confused with the giant squid, which is similar but slightly smaller. These guys live in the darkest, coldest depths surrounding the waters of Antarctica. This creature lives up to its name as it reaches an average of 46 feet in size, and it weighs around 500 kilograms, with the females being the largest of the species. They also have large tentacles equipped with suckers that have little razor hooks on them to better latch onto its prey, so let's hope it's not you. Its diet mainly consists of large fish, such as the 7-foot Patagonian toothfish. It also includes small ones, and sometimes they even consume their own kind. But they've also been known to try and consume larger prey, like sperm whales, who often have been seen with scars attributing to the battles they must have faced. They're colossal, they're scary, and they're ambitious. What more could you want from a sea monster? Only 2 specimens have ever been collected, with the second being found recently in 2014. If you ever wondered where the tales of the Kraken came from, you now know. In our number 3 spot today, we have the predatory tunicate. Okay, say what you want about any other fish on this list today, but these guys definitely look the most like aliens, and honestly, they are the epitome of deep sea weirdness. The predatory tunicate is like the Venus flytrap of the deep sea. They start out life kind of like tadpoles, and then they swim until they find their perfect spot, either along a canyon wall or right on the sea floor. Once they found their spot, they plant themselves in place using a natural adhesive that they produce. Once once planted, they will undergo a huge change, and this is where they will stay for the rest of their lives. They are super picky about where exactly they make their homes because it will be where they stay, and because they need to make sure that both the chemicals in the water in that area as well as the temperature of the water is just right. Unfortunately, if these guys get moved from the location they choose to make their home, they will die, so it's imperative that they're just left alone. They basically wait for food to drift on by, and like a Venus flytrap, when they get their meal, their mouths will snap shut until they're done digesting. The predatory tunicate is a point of study in the medical world because they actually have been known to help with some more serious medical conditions, which is always an incredible thing. In our number 2 spot today, we have the sea pen. Okay, this thing under the sea looks a lot like a pen, right? Well, the orange sea pen is not a pen, and it's not even a sort of plant. It's actually a colony of animals that can withdraw into the soft sediment wherever it is found. So I just heard of these guys today, but it turns out they are a lot more common, and there are actually about 300 species of sea pens. To make them even more out of this world, it is said that with a little stimulation, they glow with a green sort of light. So I don't know about you, but that's the most alien thing I've ever heard. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Yeti crab. Okay, I'll be honest, these guys are on this list today because they look so incredibly strange, but they are also remarkably unique. These furry clawed crabs, yes, you heard me, they were first discovered 5,000 feet deep in the ocean near a hydrothermal vent. They were found just south of Easter Island, and when found, it was realized that they were not only in a new genus of their own, but a new family as well. Because of the deep, dark, and extreme environment that these guys live in, not much about them is known at this point in time. It is believed that they likely don't have sight, and it's also thought that they might have a sort of bacteria that resides in its furry claws, which allows it to detoxify the food that is coming from the vent. Listen, the ocean is scary, but it's also unbelievable and truly incredible.
Starting off this countdown, we have the alien abduction. Back in 1956, an American Air Force Sergeant, Jonathan P. Lovett, and Major William Cunningham went out searching for debris from a recent missile launch in New Mexico. That's when Cunningham heard Lovett let out a huge scream. When he rushed over to help him, he claims he saw Lovett being pulled up by a UFO hovering above him. Lovett was then pulled inside the craft and it took off. Cunningham radioed for help, and when they arrived, they found him in complete shock and he was taken to the hospital. They then started to investigate the incident. According to the military, there was an unidentified object in that area detected on their radar, so Cunningham was telling the truth. Here's where it gets even more messed up though. 3 days later, Lovett's body was found 10 miles away. It was severely mutilated and drained completely of blood. So could it be that he literally was taken away by aliens and then killed by them? What makes this even more suspicious is that the government report on this just vanished into thin air. In our 9th spot, we have the Gorman dogfight UFO. This is said to be one of the most well-known UFO encounters from the 20th century. It's also a fairly credible one. So on October 1st, 1948, US Air Force pilot George Gorman was out flying when he spotted a UFO below him. He described it as a flying disc with round and well-defined edges that was brightly lit and circling slowly over the city. What was weird was that the object was not showing up on radar. So Gorman decided to follow it, but as he got closer to the object, it got brighter and then it shot away from him. He said it went around 250 miles per hour, then increased to 600 miles an hour. Due to its speed, Gorman lost sight of it. Now the government was all like, it's just a weather balloon. Yeah right, I think an experienced aviator would know the difference between a weather balloon and a flying saucer. In our 8th spot, we have the Pentagon. Last year, the Pentagon released footage of what they confirmed to be a UFO. I'm pretty sure by now you have all seen this video, but if you haven't, I'll share it with you today. So the UFO was captured on camera by 2 naval aviators who were shocked at what they saw.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
So in the videos you can see what appears to be a UFO flying in the sky. In the video you can hear just how shocked the pilots are at what they're seeing.
Look at that thing, dude.
In fact, fact, one of the pilots that witnessed this told CNN that the disc moved in ways he couldn't explain. Apparently, 1 second it was there and then next thing you know it disappeared. He said, and I quote, "As I got close to it, it rapidly accelerated to the south and then disappeared in less than 2 seconds. This was extremely abrupt, like a ping pong ball bouncing off a wall. It would hit and go the other way." Moving on to number 7, we have the Top Cliff UFO. On September 19th in 1952, half a dozen Royal Air Force officers were taking part of NATO exercises when they encountered a UFO. So the men were headed back in their fighter jet when crew members on the ground saw a weird, silvery, circular object traveling several thousands of feet above the jet. One of the witnesses said, and I quote, "The acceleration was in excess of that of a shooting star. I have never seen such a phenomenon before. The movements of the object were not identifiable with anything I have seen in the air." The craft then started to descend close to the fighter jet. They said it was, and I quote, "swinging in a pendular motion, similar to a falling sycamore leaf." At first, they thought it was a parachute or something that had fallen off of the jet. That was until it stopped midair, began to spin, and then just zoomed away. This sighting was then leaked to the press and was the front cover of the newspapers for quite some time. In fact, this sighting was so insane that Prime Minister Winston Churchill wanted to know more about it and get an investigation going. In our 6th spot, we have the destroyed evidence. On the morning of July 24th, 1948, 2 pilots were flying from Houston to Atlanta with their 20 passengers. That's when all of a sudden they saw a UFO flying clear as day by them. This was witnessed by the 2 pilots and 1 of the passengers. The others were asleep when this happened. One of the pilots said, and I quote, "It was clear there were no wings present, that it was powered by some jet or other type of power, shooting flame from the rear some 50 feet. There were 2 rows of windows which indicated an upper and lower deck, and from inside these windows a very bright light was glowing. Underneath the ship there was a blue glow of light." Now they all watched this for about 10 seconds until it disappeared. Obviously, they reported their findings, and this triggered a top secret investigation by the US government. In the end, their findings were destroyed, which means this could be a real UFO sighting, because if it wasn't, they wouldn't have destroyed the evidence. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the White House UFO. Back in the 1940s and 50s, there were a number of UFO sightings in the skies over Washington, D.C. It all started back in 1947 when a search and rescue pilot reported 9 saucer-like discs flying together at over 1,000 miles per hour. Within weeks, the same flying saucer sighting was reported in 40 other states. The strangest incident happened to an air traffic controller in 1952. On July 19th, Edward Nugent, working as an air traffic controller at Washington National Airport, spotted 7 slow-moving objects on his radar. They were located far from any of their flight paths. Now he made a joke being like, "Oh look, they're flying saucers," until he realized that that's probably what they actually were. At that same time, 2 more air traffic controllers saw a strange hovering bright light in the distance. Now they did send out jets to the area, but as soon as they got to the area where the objects were on the radar, they disappeared. Over the next couple of weeks, more and more UFOs were spotted. It got to the point where people were demanding answers. In our 4th spot, we have Britain's Roswell. This is said to be the UK's most famous UFO incident. So in December of 1980 in Rendlesham Forest, England, a number of people reported seeing unexplained lights and then a weird spacecraft land. It all started on December 26 when a security man saw strange lights descend into the forest. As he approached this object, it moved through the trees and the animals at a farm nearby went crazy. The following days, more and more people saw these lights. In fact, a number of credible US Air Force officials were witnesses to this account, including Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt. The lieutenant himself confirmed it to be a UFO. In our 3rd spot, we have the 6 soldiers. This next UFO encounter took place in North Korea in 1951 during the Korean War. As the men were preparing to bombard a nearby village, they were all of a sudden greeted by a strange craft. The craft emitted some form of ray that made their air burst start to explode. According to one of the men, and I quote, "Objects would get right into the center of an airburst of artillery and yet remain unharmed." They also said that they were, and I quote, "swept by some form of a ray that was emitted in pulses, in waves that you could visually see only when it was aiming directly at you. That is to say, like a searchlight sweeps around and the segments of light, you would see it coming at you." After this weird attack, the men were left sick and had to be taken to the hospital. Some say that they were attacked by a UFO. Others say they were attacked by a high-tech Soviet death ray. To this day, we still don't know. Moving on to number 2, we have the Mantell UFO incident. Named after Captain Thomas F. Mantell, a Kentucky Air National Guard pilot who sadly lost his life chasing a UFO. So on January 7th, 1948, Godman Army Airfield at Fort Knox received a report of a weird aerial object near Madisonville, Kentucky. They claim it was a floating circular object around 250 to 300 feet in diameter. So the US Air Force sent Thomas to investigate. Sadly, while doing so, he crashed his plane and lost his life. Now, Thomas was a very experienced pilot. He had spent around 2,167 hours in the air, so it's not like him to just crash like that. Other people that saw the UFO claimed it was very white with red borders at the bottom. Some even said, and I quote, "Just before leaving it came to very near the ground, staying down for about 10 seconds, then climbed at a very fast rate back to its original altitude, 10,000 feet, leveling off and disappearing into the overcast, heading 120 degrees. Its speed was greater than 100 miles per hour in level flight." And in our number 1 spot today, we have the Roswell UFO. This is said to be the most famous UFO case in America. So it takes place during the summer of 1947. A rancher named W.W. MacBrazel said he found wreckage on his big plot of land. In fact, during that time, there was a number of UFO sightings, so the rancher thought that the wreckage was from a UFO crash. So he brought that material to the sheriff, who brought it to an officer from the US Army Air Force. Later, the US Army announced that what the rancher found was a flying disc. But the following day, the US Army quickly reversed themselves, and they were like, no, it's not a UFO, it's actually just debris from a weather balloon. Years later, in 1994, they admitted that the weather balloon story had been completely bogus. Over the years, hundreds of UFO sightings have been reported in that area. Several eyewitnesses also claimed that they saw alien bodies being taken from a government test site. But the government was like, nah, those are just test dummies. Yeah, we'll go with that. I don't know, there's a number of conspiracy theories surrounding Roswell. It seems like the government might be hiding aliens there. Alright guys, that's all for today's video. Let me know in the comments below, do you believe in aliens? Do you? Let me know.
If you can believe it.
There are alien sightings and encounters that are more believable than Roswell.
Yeah, that's a pretty crazy take.
We found some good ones here for you.
We did. Check it out.
We're gonna start off the list with a pretty insane news story that didn't really make the rounds over here, which is surprising because this is absolutely nuts. So last year, residents of a small isolated village in Peru claimed to have been attacked in the night by 7-foot-tall alien beings with glowing yellow eyes. They also had dark hoods and wore armor. They looked a bit like Green Goblin from Spider-Man. At one point, one of the beings even tried to kidnap a young woman of the village. And these attacks happened repeatedly, to the point where many villagers said they were living in fear. A number of residents claimed to have fired at the creatures, but they didn't go down. They could also fly. This was all over South American news. The Peruvian military was even called in to do night patrols. So what the hell was going on here? Well, the media has now come out saying that the attacks weren't aliens, but they were just illegal miners dressed as aliens trying to scare the villagers off. But how does that explain them being seemingly immune to bullets or flying? Carlos Castro Quintanilla, the prosecutor investigating the case, believes that the miners must have been using state-of-the-art technology that allowed them to fly. What does he think these illegal miners, what do they somehow have access to jetpacks? I don't know. I'm not buying that. I'm on the fence about this one. It could be illegal miners, maybe they had bulletproof vests, but the jetpack thing, I've seen real life jetpacks and they are clunky messes. They're just, first of all, no one has access to those things, and even like flying them around, it's it's not a smooth kind of thing. We don't have jetpacks, all right? Plus, I think these villagers are smart enough to know the difference between people in masks and awful jetpacks and alien beings. I don't know. A whole bunch of these villagers all said they saw this, so it's interesting.
Next up, we have the Battle of Los Angeles, or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, which took place on February 23rd of 1942, just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. That night, all of Los Angeles went under blackout as directed by the US military, meaning all lights were off. And while the lights on the ground had been turned off, the sky above was lit up by a myriad of strange, unidentified flying objects. The military opened fire, and onlookers were absolutely stunned as 1,400 rounds of ammunition fired up into the sky appeared to have no effect on the UFO or UFOs. Smoke filled the sky, and when it cleared, not a single craft was to be found, in the sky or on the ground. Shrapnel that appeared to have ricocheted off of the target resulted in the death of 5 civilians. 3 more were killed in car accidents due to the chaos of the event, and 2 more of heart attacks due to the stress of the 2-hour-long attack. To this day, it is unknown what objects filled the sky of Los Angeles that night. The event went down in history as one of the largest UFO sightings to date. We really don't know what happened, but if you have any theories, feel free to let us know in the comments.
Next on the list, we have the Shag Harbor incident. At 11:20 p.m. on October 4th, 1967, multiple witnesses in Nova Scotia watched as a mysterious object crashed into the waters of Shag Harbor. But let's backtrack a little and go over some of the other sightings from that night leading up to this. It all began with Air Canada Flight 305, where First Officer Robert Ralph alerted Captain Pierre Charbonneau to a strange object outside the aircraft over Sherbrooke in Saint John, Quebec. It was described as a brightly lit rectangular object with smaller lights trailing it. Meanwhile, Daryl Dory and his family in Mahone Bay saw a large object in the sky. Captain Leo Howard Mercy, a fisherman, witnessed stationary blips on his radar. He, along with his crew, then looked up to see 4 bright objects in a rectangular formation in the sky. News stations were also being flooded with numerous other people reporting glowing objects over Halifax. And then we have the crash. A ton of residents reported hearing a whoosh, followed by a loud bang, and at least 11 people reported seeing a low-flying object crash into the water of Shag Harbor. I'm sure you hear a lot of banging sounds around Shag Harbor. Terrible joke. Witnesses watched as an object with glowing lights floated in the water. It was just kind of like floating there. The RCMP was then called in, who then contacted the Rescue Coordination Center, but before they could arrive, the object started to sink into the water. The Coast Guard was called in, as well as the military. No debris or survivors were found, and according to the Rescue Coordination Center in Halifax, all commercial, private, and military aircraft, they were all accounted for along the eastern seaboard. Whatever this object was, it's never been identified, and it has been officially designated as an unidentified flying object.
Next on our list today, we have the North Yorkshire, England event, which took place in 1952. Reports of a bright silver disc-shaped object the size of a large bus hovering in the sky began spreading across the country. The aircraft was witnessed by people from many different towns, as well as Royal Air Force pilots. In the days that followed, more similar objects were spotted in the skies above the county. People described the aircrafts as being even larger than the one in the first sighting, and described their maneuvers as being impossible for any known aircraft at the time. The events went on for many days and had hundreds of witnesses. Some even used radar technology to track the unknown craft, but no one was able to figure out its origin. Speculation of the UFO being an alien spaceship quickly took off, with others believing that the spherical ships belonged to the government and that they had been deployed into the sky for some kind of super secret military operation. Well, here's the thing. The event took place over 70 years ago, and the government has yet to fess up to the ships being theirs, which at this point you'd think they would have done, right? I mean, to be fair, if they did fess up by now, I probably still wouldn't believe them, but I want to know what you guys think. Alien spacecraft or yet another government cover-up story?
Next up is the Cash Landrum incident. On the evening of December 29th, 1980, Betty Cash, Vicki Landrum, and Vicki's grandson Colby Landrum were driving home to Dayton, Texas, after dining out when they encountered a mysterious diamond-shaped object emitting flames and intense heat. It was floating above the trees. At first, Landrum, thinking it was a sign of the second coming, told Cash to stop the car. Cash considered turning back, but the road was too narrow. The object was described as intensely bright, with small blue lights descending toward the road, emitting flames periodically. Cash and Landrum had gotten out of the car to look at the object, but got back in when the heat became more and more intense. It got so bad that it burned Cash's hand when she touched the car. Landrum even left a handprint on the dashboard. Then the object started ascending again, and after it was back up in the air, a group of military helicopters surrounded it. So after making it back home that night, the three started feeling off, reporting symptoms like nausea and skin burns after the encounter, with Cash experiencing severe health issues, including large blisters and clumps of her hair falling out. Vicky developed a cataract, and Betty was diagnosed with cancer later on. Symptoms resembling radiation exposure, really looks like. The two went on to seek legal action, suing the US government for $20 million, but the case ended up being dismissed.
Alright, next on our list we have the Gorman incident. In October of 1948, Second Lieutenant George F. Gorman was flying a P-15 Mustang aircraft during a training flight. Everything seemed to be going pretty routine until he noticed a strange object in the sky. At first he assumed it to be some type of weather balloon or other kind of experimental aircraft, but as he flew closer to the object to get a better observation, he realized it was something entirely different. He described it as some kind of pulsating, glowing ball of light. He tried to fly away from it, but to his surprise, the object began to follow him. Gorman tried to outmaneuver the unidentifiable flying object, but he was unsuccessful. He claimed that it appeared as though the UFO could anticipate his moves before they even happened. After a while, Gorman began to get seriously freaked out, and in a final attempt to lose this strange glowing ball, he decided the best plan of action was a nosedive. He dove the plane directly towards the ground, and after a 27-minute chase, he was able to lose the object. He leveled out his plane and lived to tell the tale. But no one, including Gorman, knows exactly what was seen in the sky that day. But what's even crazier is that after the incident, his plane tested positive for radioactivity. No one knows why. That's so wild.
Next on the list is the Alderney UFO sighting. On April 23, 2007, pilot Ray Boyer and his passengers observed a strange light while flying near Alderney. At first he thought it was reflected light, but soon realized that it was an object, estimating its size to be about a mile wide. He described it as bright yellow gold with black bands on the side. He also spotted a second object, similar but further away. Boyer reported the sighting to authorities, labeling it a near miss. Now, despite his report, the British Ministry of Defense didn't carry out an investigation, stating it occurred in French airspace. Witnesses on Boyer's aircraft and another pilot from Blue Islands confirmed seeing similar objects. One described it as sunlight colored and another as an elongated oval.
Next up, we have a UFO sighting at the O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. The incident took place at 4:15 p.m. on November 7th of 2006, so it's actually pretty recent. 12 different airport employees reported seeing a large saucer-shaped, unidentified flying object hovering over one of the airport gates, gate C-17 to be exact. And it was actually hovering above another aircraft that had been set to depart O'Hare but was delayed because there was a giant flying saucer hovering above it. Duh. The pilots in the plane, along with mechanics on the ground and airline management, reported to have seen the object. But air traffic controllers, however, did not see it because for some reason the craft above the plane was not picked up on their radars. The UFO was visible for several minutes before it suddenly disappeared. And even though the incident had many credible witnesses and was later investigated by the Federal Aviation Administration, no explanation was ever given regarding the events of the day.
Alright, Travis Walton case. So this story has it all. A UFO sighting corroborated by multiple witnesses and a supposed encounter with alien beings. So it was November 5th, 1975. Travis Walton and his fellow loggers had finished up their day in the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest in Arizona. They loaded onto their truck and began the drive back home. They hadn't gotten far though when they noticed odd lights hovering above some trees. They decided to drive closer to see what was going on, and that's when they saw a massive unidentified object. Travis got out of the truck to see what the thing was, and then was suddenly lifted into the air by a beam of light. The rest of his friends drove out of there in a panic, but knew they couldn't leave him there. By the time they returned to the scene though, Travis was gone, and he would be missing for days. 5 days after disappearing, Travis Walton showed up again though. He placed a call to his sister's place from a phone booth outside of town. He was found disoriented and disturbed and began telling this horrifying story about how he'd woken up in a hospital-like room where two bald, alien-like entities were looking down at him. He tried to fight the creatures off before a human being wearing a helmet led him to another room where 3 other humans put a plastic mask over his face. He then lost consciousness again before waking up by the side of the highway.
And to finish off our list today, we have the possible involvement of a UFO in the disappearance of an F-89C Scorpion jet fighter. The aircraft had been used in a training mission over Lake Superior in Michigan in 1953. It had left from the Kincheol Air Force Base, I apologize if I'm saying that wrong, with 2 incredibly experienced pilots at its controls. As it tends to, everything was going smoothly until it wasn't. All of a sudden, the plane had disappeared from the tracking radars on the ground, and it was replaced by something else, an object that was moving around erratically and rapidly. Ground operators were unable to identify what it might be, but knew that it couldn't possibly be the missing aircraft due to its movements. Eventually, that object also vanished from the radar. An investigation was conducted on the disappearance of the jet fighter as well as the pilots on board, as well as the origin of the second radar detection. But it should come as a shock to none of you that the investigation revealed absolutely nothing. But officials did say that based on the pilot's level of expertise and the relatively easy nature of the flight, it's highly unlikely that their disappearance was an accident. But what do you guys think?
Coming in at number 10 is alien bodies. Last week, after testifying under oath in front of Mexico's Congress, journalist and ufologist Jose Jaime Maussan shocked the world with 2 boxes that he claimed to contain the bodies of deceased aliens. This is the first time extraterrestrial life is presented in such a form, and I think there is a clear demonstration that we are dealing with non-human specimens that are not related to any other species in our world, Jose told the lawmakers. He also said, at the moment, the Pentagon has not agreed to release this information and allow congressmen to witness these biological remains. We are going to discover at this moment those bodies that, according to the scientists who are going to declare it here, are non-human beings. Now, he also claimed they are beings, non-humans, who are not a part of our terrestrial evolution, and that after disappearing, we do not think there is a subsequent evolution. According to Jose, the National Autonomous University of Mexico performed carbon-14 dating on the perpetrated bodies and determined them to be between 700 years and 1,800 years old. Number 9. The Phoenix Lights. The Phoenix Lights were a series of widely sighted unidentified flying objects observed in the sky over the southwestern states of Arizona and Nevada on March 13, 1997. Lights of varying descriptions were seen by thousands of people between 7:30 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. in the space of about 300 miles from the Nevada line straight through Phoenix to the end of Tucson. Some witnesses described seeing what happened to be a huge carpenter square-shaped UFO containing 5 spherical lights. There were 2 distinct events involved in the incident: a triangular formation of lights seen to pass over the state, and a series of stationary lights seen in the Phoenix area. Now, this wasn't the only time the lights were seen, as there were reports of strange lights over the state in 2007 and 2008. Now, this event has since become one of the most notorious UF sightings in history. Number 8. The Salford Grey. The county of Yorkshire has reportedly seen over 200 alien and UFO sightings in the last 20 years, but while there isn't a lot of footage that's readily available, just a few miles away in Salford, there is quite the compelling video of a grey alien wandering around. Now, grey aliens tend to be the ones that people most think of when they think of aliens, and are often what alleged abductees describe after they've been returned. Now, this video was posted onto YouTube by a channel called Para Truthers, which claims
claims it was recently shut down by the government and has posted several sightings of these gray aliens similar to the one in this video. The caption on YouTube reads, "Grey alien caught on camera January 2015 in Salford, UK. Look at how it walks. This is definitely a real alien. It's way too tall and skinny to be a regular person, and its skin appears wet like a snake's skin. This is definitely the rare tall white type of grey. Never before sighted in the UK. What are they doing here? What are they doing?" Now, does this look believable to you? Personally, I'm not too sure. Number 7. Tic Tac UFO. Recently, 2 former Navy pilots were interviewed by 60 Minutes on CBS News about a UFO sighting over the Pacific Ocean in 2004. Commander Dave Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich spotted the unidentified object during a training exercise but were unable to classify it. Dave described it as a little white tic-tac looking object, adding that it lacked conventional exhaust plumes and had no wings or visible markings. It also moved erratically, the pilot said. In an interview with NBC News, Dave described the 2004 encounter, calling the object the strangest, most obscure thing I've ever seen flying. As soon as we look down, we see the white water, and then we see this little white tic-tac. It's pointing north-south, and it's just going forward, back, left, right, he said, adding that it was bouncing around like a ping pong ball. Dave said he approached the mysterious object to take a closer look and began mirroring his movements, and then when the pilot got within half a mile of the UFO, it suddenly vanished. Number 6. Fresno Nightcrawler. In 2007, Fresno homeowner Jose managed to capture footage of what looks like a pair of pants walking on their own, just taking a stroll down his driveway. Jose only saw them after reviewing the footage, and these beings baffled him as well as investigators of the sci-fi docuseries Fact or Faked Paranormal Files, who deemed the suspicious slacks unconfirmable. Now, by all accounts, the Nightcrawler is pale, slender, and walks as though it is crawling, despite being an upright biped. The Fresno sighting was documented. Other people have claimed to have witnessed the same creature in the immediate area. Sometimes there has been a pair seen together, with the only difference being in its height. Now, footage of the creature exists, and it's clearly not a creature of this world, and there's been speculation online that they're figures from Native American lore, but with little to support it, it seems like we'll never know what was taking a midnight stroll that night. Number 5. The Watchmen. For Yalçın Yalman, aliens and UFOs are seemingly all in a day's work. The Turkish night watchman is so used to encounters with extraterrestrials that he's pretty much unfazed by them. Since 2007, from the suburban Istanbul holiday village where he worked as a night watchman, he has captured many photos and videos of UFOs. His documentation of UFO sightings doesn't just span a few minutes or hours, but years of repeated visitations. Now, in some of his footage, you can even make out 2 pilots of the craft that he has shot. It seems like this night watchman doesn't just look out for intruders, but aliens as well. Number 4. Triangle Object. The Defense Department has confirmed that leaked photos and video of an unidentified aerial phenomena taken in 2019 are indeed legitimate images of unexplained objects. Photos and videos of triangle-shaped objects blinking and moving through the clouds were taken by Navy personnel, Pentagon spokeswoman Sue Go said in a statement to CNN. She also confirmed that the photos of 3 unidentified flying objects, one sphere-shaped, another acorn-shaped, and one characterized as a metallic blimp, were also taken by Navy personnel. As we have said before, to maintain operation security and to avoid disclosing information that may be useful to potential adversaries, DoD does not discuss publicly the details of either the observations or the examinations of reported incursions in our training ranges or designated airspace, including those incursions initially designated as UAP, she said. She also said that the Unidentified Aerial Phenomenon Task Force, created to investigate UFO sightings observed by the military, has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations. Number 3. The Redgate Alien. Over in Montana, a trail camera captured a candid photo of a creature that appears to be out of this world. The Redgate area has garnered a reputation in recent years as being somewhat of a UFO and alien sighting hotspot. Now, a man claims to have evidence of alien life after his hunting camera recorded a naked, bulbous head figure running. The eerie image shows what looks like a gray humanoid darting around a field. Now, the hunter who took the photo, Donald Bromley, said that he initially thought the creature was a person, but the more he looked at the image, he became convinced it had extraterrestrial origins. Speaking to the local outlet KXLF, he said, "The more I looked at it, it was odd, it was out of place, and everything just matches the alien persona, the bigger bulbous head, and you can tell he has no clothes. It's kind of a transparent being." Number 2, leaked video. A leaked Navy video captured in July 2019 showed a sphere-shaped unidentified object flying over water near San Diego. Now, the footage, obtained by a documentary filmmaker and shared with NBC News, appeared to show the mysterious object flying for a few minutes before disappearing into the water. The video was captured by a Navy aircraft and recorded in the USS Omaha's Combat Information Center, according to the filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. The clip appears to show a spherical object flying above the water for a few minutes near San Diego before it vanishes. "It splashed," a military personnel can be heard saying in the video. Now, the Defense Department confirmed that the clip was recorded by Navy personnel and said it will be reviewed by the Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, a panel which was established last year to gain insight into the nature and origins of such objects. And coming in at number 1 is backyard aliens. In late April of this year, Las Vegas police officers investigated reports of 2 unknown entities falling from the sky, and on the same night, a nearby resident called 911 to report something 100% not human on their property. According to authorities, a man called 911 to report 2 unknown entities in his backyard after he and his family saw a similar object fall from the sky. The man described the creature as 8 to 10 feet tall beings that appear to be like aliens with big mouths, big shiny eyes, and added they're 100% not human. They were looking right at him and his family from their backyard, and he kept clarifying that it was not a joke and that he was terrified of whatever was lurking in the dark. While initially open for several days, the department has closed the case, and the family said officials returned to the home over several days to investigate, and representatives from nearby Creech and Nellis Air Force Base said they were not involved in the incident and suggested contacting Metro Police. Now, a spokesperson for the Pentagon did not immediately respond for questions regarding this event. So, who knows what they truly saw. Number 10. Antonio Villas-Boas. On October 16th, 1957, at night, Antonio Villas-Boas was plowing fields when he saw what he described as a red star in the night sky that approached him, growing in size. The craft began descending to land on the field, and he decided to leave. Smart choice. He first attempted to leave the scene on his tractor, but its lights and engine died, so he decided to continue on foot. However, he was seized by a 5-foot-tall humanoid who was wearing gray coveralls and a helmet. Its eyes were small and blue, and instead of speech, it made noises like barks or yelps. 3 similar beings then joined, and they dragged him to inside their craft. Once inside the craft, Antonio said he was stripped of his clothes and covered from head to toe with a strange gel. He was then led into a large semicircular room through a doorway that had strange red symbols written all over it. They then took blood from him and took him to a 3rd room where some kind of gas was pumped into the room, which made him violently ill. Shortly after this, Antonio was joined in the room by another humanoid. This one, however, was female, very attractive, and naked. So the two had sexual intercourse. Antonio was then given back his clothing and taken on a tour of the ship by the humanoids. He was then escorted off the ship and watched as it took off, glowing brightly. When he returned home, he had discovered that 4 hours had passed. Wow. Number 9. Barney and Betty Hill. The UFO sighting happened about 10:30 p.m. September 19th, 1961. Barney and Betty were driving, and Betty saw a bright point of light in the sky, and they stopped to take a look. Through binoculars, Barney saw what he reasoned was a commercial airliner, but soon changed his mind because without looking as if it had turned, the craft rapidly descended in his direction. They quickly returned to the car, and the couple watched as silent, illuminated craft moved erratically and bounced back and forth in the night sky. The object rapidly descended towards their vehicle, causing Barney to stop in the middle of the highway. The huge silent craft hovered about 80 to 100 feet above their car. Using the binoculars, Barney claimed to have seen 8 to 11 humanoid figures who were peering out of the craft's windows, seemingly to look at him. One figure continued to look at Barney and communicated a message telling him to stay where you are and looking. Barney said they were wearing glossy black uniforms and black caps. He drove away and they heard a rhythmic series of beeping or buzzing sounds. The car vibrated and a tingling sensation passed through their bodies, and they experienced the onset of an altered state of consciousness that left their mind dulled. A second series of beeping or buzzing sounds returned the couple to full consciousness. They found that they had traveled nearly 35 miles or 56 kilometers, but had only vague, spotty memories of this section of the road. Number 8. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker. The Pascagoula abduction was a UFO sighting and alien abduction in 1973, which Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker claimed they were abducted by aliens while fishing near Pascagoula, Mississippi. On the evening of October 11, 1973, 42-year-old Charles Hickson and 19-year-old Calvin Parker told the Jackson County, Mississippi Sheriff's Office they were fishing off a pier. They heard a whirling/whizzing sound, saw two flashing blue lights, observed an oval-shaped object 30 to 40 feet across and 8 to 10 feet high. They claimed that they were conscious but paralyzed while three creatures with robotic slit mouths and crab-like pincers took them aboard the object and subjected them to an examination. Number 7. Demi Lovato. Yes, that Demi Lovato, the singer, songwriter, and actress. Demi claims they were abducted by 3 space aliens and taken to a pink and purple planet. Demi appeared on the Kelly Clarkson show and said, "I woke up in my room and there were 3 beings. They asked, 'Do you want to see your planet?' I whooshed out of the room, I hovered before our planet, then whooshed to this pink and purple planet." Now, some people are skeptical she made this up to promote her limited series streaming on Peacock, Unidentified with Demi Lovato, but if it is true, what an experience. Number 6. Audrey and Debbie Hewins. Twins Audrey and Debbie Hewins said they were abducted by aliens. "I was probably about 5 years old or so," said Audrey, "and bright blue light would come into the room and the door would open and there would be like a foggy kind of misty blue light just shining through the whole house. And these 2 figures would come in. We have been up in crafts and seen our house from above. They are very good at mind erasing or whatever you want to call it. They'll leave you with bits and pieces of things you can remember." Debbie added, "I remember one time being on a spaceship and standing there on the spaceship and the floor and the walls disappeared. They started doing all kinds of experiments on us when we were 12. She was initially hesitant to come forward, and Audrey claimed that after a non-human entity saved her from drowning in the ocean, she was inspired to dedicate her life to openly discussing her alien abduction experiences." Number 5. Thomas Reed. On September 1st, 1969, Thomas Reed and his family in Berkshire County, Massachusetts, saw a UFO. In the car with his mother, brother, and grandmother that night, the family noticed a group of glowing orbs dash out the roadside trees. "It came to a stop off the right side of the road," Thomas said. "Eventually, everything got really calm. It was like being in the middle of a hurricane. It was just dead silence. Then there was an eruption of crickets and frogs and it got really loud and that was it. Then the family suddenly found itself back in the car. But they had inexplicably lost 2 hours of memory. Stranger still, Reed's mother and grandmother had somehow switched car seats. He said over time the family regained some memory of the incident, including having been to a hangar-like facility with other people. "We encountered something, it was definitely not of this world. The hangar thing we were in was huge, it was larger than a football field. The hallway we had seen was circular with a wide configuration, almost to control the flow of traffic, and this one room had a bowed-in wall that was rounded." Number 4. Whitley Strieber. Whitley Strieber has written fiction for more than 40 years, and he said his writing streak was interrupted one night in the late 80s by an alien abduction in upstate New York. The alleged incident occurred on the night of December 26, 1985, as Whitley slept alone in his cabin in the woods. Woken by a strange noise, he saw a small, non-human entity approaching his bed. Suddenly, it was morning. According to him, beings that he has since referred to as visitors entered his home and abducted him. He also detailed another alien encounter that he claims took place in Toronto. Asleep in his Delta Chelsea hotel room in the middle of the night on June 6, 1998, Whitley claimed to have been visited by another mysterious stranger. "I got up to open the door, thinking it was a room service waiter. It was not, it was a man described as 5.5 feet tall, older looking like someone in his 70s. He wore dark colored clothing, a turtleneck, and charcoal slacks. He claimed the visitor stood motionless by his window for nearly an hour, expounding on the dangers of creating creating an intelligence more evolved than its creator. He said it was the most extraordinary conversation I have ever had in my entire life. Number 3. Frederick Valentich. On October 21st, 1978, Australian pilot Frederick Valentich disappeared into thin air. At 7:06 p.m. while at 4,500 feet, after departing, he reported that an unidentified craft was following him. Melbourne Flight Service insisted that there was no traffic near him, but the pilot was adamant. He explained that it had 4 bright lights and suddenly passed 1,000 feet above him at remarkable speed. For 5 straight minutes, Frederick described its movements and shiny metallic exterior. Suddenly, he experienced engine trouble and said that the aircraft was hovering and that it's not an aircraft. Then they never heard from him again. The last sound radio officials heard was a metallic scraping sound. Authorities presumed he had crashed, but a later search of the area yielded nothing. In 2014, a UFO action group in Victoria alleged that a farmer observed a UFO nearly 90 feet in length hovering above his farm the morning following Frederick's disappearance. The farmer also claimed that the pilot's plane was stuck to the UFO, leaking oil. While the farmer said he scratched the airplane's registration number on his tractor, he never came forward. Ultimately, only a few possibilities regarding the disappearance of Frederick Valentich exist: that he crashed and his remains were never recovered, that he purposely disappeared, or, of course, that he was abducted by aliens. Number 2. Terrell Copeland. The Virgin pilot Terrell Copeland claimed that he was abducted by aliens, particularly because he was a Marine. Terrell claimed that his first experience with aliens occurred in 2007 when he captured footage of what he believed to be a UFO on his cell phone from his apartment in Suffolk, Virginia. It was an orb of light, just a big ball of light. It wasn't moving, one was solid white, the other was directly across the street from it, up 300 feet above ground, and was changing colors very rapidly, he said. He alleged that it wasn't until after he published the footage online that things truly became strange. I woke up from a nap by the sound of someone trying to enter my apartment, and I said, "Who is it?" There was no answer. You can see the doorknob moving and scratching at the door. I keep a firearm, it was on my table, and my thought was to get up and check. Despite the urge to get up, Terrell was paralyzed and only able to move his eyes. Suddenly, he heard a voice through the door tell him, "You don't need that weapon. We won't harm." He then began to experience missing hours as well. He was incapable of accounting for waking hours during a span of 2 nights. I was in a room and I saw a woman who did not have a complete human features. She had the typical black eyes that you hear about. She had an elongated skull, and that startled me. And the next memory I have is me standing on my balcony waving at this cylinder-shaped ship, he said. And coming in at number 1 is Travis Walton. On November 5th, 1975, Travis Walton was abducted by aliens and didn't return for 5 whole days. Travis's abduction began after working in Sightings National Forest near Heber, Arizona. Travis and a 6-man group of vloggers were returning home when they allegedly spotted a shiny disc spanning 40 feet in diameter hovering in the sky above them. He said it was a metallic, glowing disc making some very strange sound. The closer I got to it, the more scared we all got, and they were swearing at me to get away from there, and when I got up close, it suddenly got louder and started to move. Travis then claimed that non-human beings abducted him and experimented on him until he fought them off. But as the beings poked and prodded at him on a kind of table, 5 days elapsed on Earth where Walton was officially declared missing. I became conscious in the aircraft, and I believed I was in the hospital. I was in a lot of pain, and as I became more conscious, I looked around and saw alien beings, and I just panicked. They were much smaller than me, and I think that's the reason they gave up. Once they found out they couldn't control me, they split. Later research conducted on the site of Travis's abduction showed an unusual growth rate in the trees where the craft had allegedly hovered. The trees near the site were found to be producing wood fiber at a rate 36 times greater than they had decades before.
Number 10. NASA hacked. So first off, how do things like this from NASA even manage to get leaked? Well, apparently by British guys like Gary McKinnon hacking into their system. Between the years 2001 and 2002, Gary broke into 97 different government computers, believing NASA was hiding signs of alien life because of thousands of pictures of UFOs he found hidden away. A former NASA employee had said that satellite images were checked for UFOs and deleted if they showed any evidence, and Gary decided he wanted to break into NASA in order to validate these these claims. He says that he found 4 different folders titled Filtered, Unfiltered, Processed, and Raw. He says that his slow internet connection only made him able to download 1 image before he lost access to the rest of them, the picture apparently being a clear image of a cigar-shaped spacecraft. Gary believes that NASA is hiding a wealth of UFO evidence from the public. Number 9. Edgar Mitchell. Astronaut Edgar Mitchell landed on the moon with the Apollo 14 mission, and he also believed that aliens helped prevent a conflict between the United States and Russia. He claimed that top military officials were hiding evidence of unidentified flying objects, and the fact that they were apparently often spotted hovering over White Sands testing range in New Mexico. In 2015, he said, "White Sands was a testing ground for atomic weapons, and that's what the extraterrestrials were interested in. They wanted to know about our military capabilities. My own experience talking to people has made it clear the ETs had been attempting to keep us from going to war and help create peace on Earth." He stated that the military had given him loads of information on aliens and their interactions with Earth, and after he left NASA, he dedicated his life and studies to looking into extraterrestrial existence. Number 8. Mars photos. A man named Richard Hoagland believes that NASA knows a lot more about Mars than they're letting on. He believes that astronauts have been to Mars and that there's a plethora of evidence of alien life on Mars that NASA is insistent on covering up. During the Viking 1 orbit in 1976, NASA released various photographs of the surface of Mars, and some of them seemed to show various different structures and one that apparently even looked like the Sphinx. This led people to believe that these structures had been built by aliens who lived on the Red Planet. Years later, in 1998, NASA took more pictures to debunk the theory, showing only rocks, but Richard and others believe that this is them trying to hide the truth and shrinking the structures that were previously on the planet. He also pulled up a NASA commissioned report from 1960 that recommended any future discoveries of alien life be hidden from the public so as not to disrupt the evolutionary flow of the century. Number 7. Sun object. Last video I talked about NASA cutting off their ISS feed when people believed that they saw a UFO falling towards the Earth. This one is a similar scenario, except it came from footage of the sun. In May of 2012, a YouTube user posted a video of a mysterious object seen flying near the sun in NASA's broadcast. The video zooming in on the pyramid-shaped object that many believe to be some sort of alien craft flying near the sun. A day later, NASA shut down the video feed. In a second video, the user said, "This is a cover-up to prevent us from seeing these things again. NASA must have seen this video and started making plans to change the way you and I are allowed to view it. NASA are clearly trying to stop us looking at the sun." Alien deniers may say that this is just some sort of camera glitch or sun flare, but I think we all know the truth. People telling you not to look at the sun is actually just propaganda so we don't see the aliens. And I'm just gonna say quickly for legal reasons that I do not actually condone staring into the sun. Number 6. The Cube. This also isn't the only case of NASA cutting off the sun live stream after suspicious activity. It happened just this year in May as well. On May 2nd at around 1 in the afternoon, a large black cube appeared to come out of the sun, visible for about 2 seconds. A glitch then appeared on the live stream covering a large part of it, and after it clears, the cube is gone. An expert posted this to YouTube going over the footage and claims that this is evidence of some sort of alien spaceship coming out of the sun. Perhaps they have a secret alien base in there. Also, I say expert because he is a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, and honestly, I'm gonna start calling myself that as well. You guys are watching a video from an expert now, people. Most people in the comments claim that this was just some sort of square-shaped solar flare, while another even claimed it was the manifestation of an angel gaining power from the sun. Number 5. Evidence scale. This one is not so much leaked, but was instead part of an announcement that NASA was going to become more serious about trying to discover life on other planets. They announced that they are going to have a scale to measure extraterrestrial evidence so that it's not as black and white as life or no life. proposed by NASA chief scientist Jim Green, the scale includes 7 different levels, which ranks evidence of life based on their environment and the opinions of the scientific community at large. The highest levels on the scale are of course level 6, verifying signs of life with several different instruments, and level 7, and on different locations on the world. They said in a statement, "We need a better way to share the excitement of our discoveries and demonstrate how each discovery builds on the next, so that we can bring the public and other scientists along on the journey. This new eagerness to bring people along on the journey of discovery could be a sign that they're warming us up to revealing aliens." Number 4. Meteorite. In 2011, a NASA scientist came out claiming that they had found legitimate evidence of alien life, this being from fossils inside a meteorite that landed on Earth. Richard Hoover said that he found evidence of what is basically microscopic little alien bugs, or as the science people call it, filaments and other structures that appear to be fossils of algae known as cyanobacteria, little alien bugs. Laboratory tests done found no evidence that they were the remains of Earth-based organisms, despite being slightly similar to organisms that have been found in the waterways of Spain. Hoover says that the lack of nitrogen, which is essential for life on Earth, proves that they are the remains of extraterrestrial life forms that grew on the parent bodies of the meteorites when liquid water was present, long before the meteorites entered the Earth's atmosphere. This isn't the first time that this sort of evidence has been found on meteorites, and it probably won't be the last. Number 3. Anonymous. We know that the infamous Gary McKinnon managed to hack into the NASA databases and find secret UFO pictures, but did you know that the group known as Anonymous did it as well? In 2017, they made a 12.5-minute long YouTube video where they claimed to have gained access to secret NASA information, telling people that NASA was covering up the discovery of alien life. They said that the organization had recently found 219 new planet candidates, 10 having very similar conditions to Earth. Because of this, the group came to believe that NASA was either incredibly close to finding alien life or had already found it. They also stated that this was a sign NASA was getting closer and closer to revealing the truth about aliens. And while many people brushed it off as being ridiculous, we now know that NASA has just revealed their new UFO study, so Anonymous may have been closer to the truth than we thought. Number 2. Black Knight Satellite. Alright, now let's get into some stuff that is a little more conspiratorial than usual, if that's even possible, and various different ways that people believe NASA is trying to cover stuff up, but apparently not doing a good enough job. There is a conspiracy that there is a satellite called the Black Knight Satellite, which was set up by aliens more than 12,000 years ago in order to spy on humans. Photos from the first shuttle trip to the International Space Station in 1998 appeared to show a large black object hovering over Earth, and people believed it was the first photographic evidence of the Black Knight satellite. All previous evidence from years before were just things like radio signals. They also believed that back in the early 1900s, Nikola Tesla actually picked up signals from the Black Knight. Whether or not you actually believe in the existence of the satellite spying on us apparently doesn't matter anymore, as it was reportedly shot down by the Illuminati in 2017. Number 1. Hollow Earth. Alright, this one's not so much about aliens, but trust me on this, I am a self-proclaimed extraterrestrial expert, okay? In 2016, one YouTube user suggested that NASA was trying to cover up the existence of something at the North and South poles. Old satellite images of Earth from space appear to apparently show some sort of a massive hole at each end of the Earth, what they claim to be an entrance. If you're not sold on the flat Earth theory, then let me introduce you to Hollow Earth. As its name suggests, the truth is apparently that the inside of the Earth is hollow and actually contains inner Earth complete with its own sun. Explorers have apparently seen the inner Earth firsthand when flying over the North Pole. So this is just a cool, crazy conspiracy, and it doesn't actually really relate to aliens, but I just wanted to talk about it. So as an alien expert, I'm just gonna say that the inner Earth Earth is actually where all the aliens live and they control us from the inside. Number 10, contractor. A former NASA contractor went on video to reveal the fact that NASA has been keeping secrets from us. She says she both viewed and heard evidence that 3 NASA astronauts said that they had seen unidentified flying objects land on the moon, but that these events were later covered up in an operation that was codenamed Santa Claus, a fitting name as NASA wants you to believe that UFOs are just about as real as Santa. She says that she had clearance to enter Building 8 at NASA's Johnson Space Center back in the 1970s. She says that she received information over lunch from officials that if anyone was ever caught exposing aliens as real, they would lose their pensions, and apparently one person in the past had not only lost their pension, but had disappeared off the face of the earth. In the video, she said, "They didn't threaten to kill me, but I got the message I shouldn't talk about it." She apparently witnessed everything from employees being forced to burn photographic evidence and seeing official pictures being airbrushed to hide UFOs. Number 9, the Kecksburg File. On the night of December 9th, 1965, a giant fireball which caused a sonic boom streaked across the sky before crashing into the woods in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. Military immediately arrived and sealed off the area, hauling off a massive object the size of a bus to their Air Force base nearby in Ohio. The Pentagon immediately tried to cover it up, saying it was a meteorite, releasing no details about the incident. But in 2003, NASA went on to say that it was not a satellite, but 2 years later in 2005, they said, yeah, actually it was a satellite, just don't worry about it. The cover-up seemed never ending, and it just led more and more people to become interested in finding out the truth of the Kecksburg file. A Freedom of Information Act was then started to get the file looked into again, and the judge threw away NASA's attempts to have the lawsuit thrown out. So in 2007, they announced they would be reopening the Kecksburg file, but they claimed that a majority of the files had been destroyed or lost, and they never released what it actually was that crashed that day. Number 8, astronaut. Like I said in the first point, there is allegedly a conspiracy within NASA to cover up any of their employees or former employees talking about the fact that they have had alien experiences. But as I have mentioned in other parts of this list, there are actually a handful of astronauts who have spoken out about potentially alien encounters. Leland Melvin is probably best known for taking his astronaut photos with his rescued dogs, but what you're probably not familiar with is the fact that he has shared his alien experiences on Twitter. He received a question on Twitter that read, "What's your outlook about the existence of intelligent alien life living in our solar system? Have you ever witnessed a UFO?" And Leland went on to respond with, "I have not seen one in space or on the ground, but thought I saw something organic/alien-like floating out of the payload bay. Randy Bresnick and I called the ground to ask what it could be, and they said it was ice that had broken off of the Freon hoses. Translucent, curved, organic looking, with an alien emoji at the end. Of course, he explains it by saying it was just ice, but that was probably just NASA feeding them an easy cover-up. Number 7, moon crash. The Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter is similar to the Mars Orbiter that I have talked about before. It basically watches over the moon and takes pictures of its surface. Earlier this year, they released a photo that had many people scratching their heads and insisting that NASA was doing yet another cover-up. The photo shows the surface of the moon with what is called a double impact crater. While the moon is covered in tons of craters, this one is unique for this reason. The evidence of the dozens of feet wide indentation seems to show that some sort of man-made spaceship crashed into the moon and left the divot. Many people on social media believe this to be evidence that some sort of alien craft had hit the moon, but NASA tried to shut everyone up by claiming it was just an out-of-control rocket. While they seem to know it was a rocket, they admitted that they don't have any idea where it came from or what its original path was intended to be. So even if it's not aliens, it's still pretty confusing. Number 6, alien photo. Mars is one of the main planets that many people believe could be host to aliens, hence the term Martians and all the fictitious media that includes alien creatures visiting from Mars. On February 4th of this year, one person online dug up a photo that the Perseverance rover had taken on Mars back in 2021. The title of the blog post being, "Alien Figure Watching Mars Rover, 100% Proof of Life UFO Sighting News." The image seems to show a dark figure laying on a large Martian rock. It's distinctly human-shaped and darkly colored and stands out from anything else in the area or what we've seen in previous pictures. The man explains in his blog blog post everything that he believes it to be. There is a person laying down watching the NASA Mars rover from a safe distance away. The person is about 1 foot tall, 0.3 meters, and is lying down. Pinkish upper chest, neck and face, reddish hair, wearing a dark suit, but has a gray object over one shoulder. Looks like a backpack of some sort. There are even footprints behind the person leading up to the location they chose to lay down at. If you don't agree with that, then what do you think it could be? Number 5. Mercury UFO. Project Mercury was NASA's first ambitious space mission, which took place back in the early 1960s, which included 6 manned space flights. But that isn't what we're going to be focusing on. One of the Mercury probes sent out into space took a picture of what appears to clearly be a UFO. A photo that a NASA blogger found in an old disk from the mission that took place in December 1960 appears to show a strange shape that looks like it could be an alien spacecraft. While many arguments against UFOs are that they're just random space junk, this was at the beginning of NASA's steps out into space, so there really couldn't have been that many rocket pieces and broken panels floating around. The blogger says that he believes this is aliens wanting to watch one of humanity's biggest steps, not worrying about being seen because this particular craft didn't actually have any humans on it. Number 4. Deleted UFO. This same blogger also recently found evidence of NASA purposefully covering up and deleting archival photos that appear to show evidence of aliens. He found a photo of what appears to be a large, dark, rectangular alien ship flying past the sun, and he also found that NASA is trying to hide it. On his blog, he said, "I found a huge rectangle UFO shooting past our sun, and it's got to be several miles across or more. I tried to find it on another NASA site, but I got an error message. Then I tried using official European Space Administration software, and again, error message. Then I went into the individual photos online and input my own URL, but these photo times do not exist. That's 3 different sources all erased from existence. I found it at a 4th source." He says that he won't reveal this other source as he doesn't want it taken down as well. There are 20 different photos in a row that all show the unidentified craft, and he calls NASA out for never saying anything about it. Number 3. Mars photos. I talked about this on a separate list, but I also wanted to touch on it here too. We've taken a look at one Mars rover photo already, but I want to dive into just how many of these there are. People are constantly picking out unexplained and potentially alien things popping up in these photos of the red planet. One of the most baffling recent images is this one that appears to show some sort of carved out entryway which people believe must lead to some sort of alien hideout on the planet, looking too precise to have been caused by natural weather and environment conditions like NASA claims. There have also been many rocks that appear to be much more than just rocks, as they stand out from anything else in the photos, almost looking like a sort of coral growing out from the ground through the dust. There are a lot of them, and NASA has attempted to explain away all these photos, but there is still just a lot of mystery there. Number 2. The Calvine photo. This one is similar to the Kecksburg file in the way that it is also a UFO encounter from many decades ago that NASA tried to hide away by claiming it was lost. The photo was taken in August 1990 by 2 hikers near Calvine in Scotland. It shows what is clearly a large diamond-shaped vessel flying through the sky, being trailed by another airplane. They took pictures and said it appeared to be about 30 meters long. It apparently then shot straight up into the sky and disappeared, never to be seen again. The photo was first given to the newspaper and then handed over to the Ministry of Defense, and then it was never discussed again, and the photo apparently went missing. In October of 2021, the Scottish Operations Records book was checked, and there was no account of anything having been spotted in the sky on that day. One determined individual, however, managed to track down the lost photo, and about it they said, "The Calvine photograph stands as one of the biggest mysteries in UFO history. Finally revealed after 32 years, it shows that answers only bring new questions." Number 1. Space nudes. In May of this year, it was revealed to the public that NASA was going to be sending a message out to aliens, calling it the Beacon in the Galaxy. It's a binary coded message that includes details about our planet and human life that is going to be shot into space for anybody to find. One of these images was revealed to be an image of what a genetically male and female human look like, and yes, it has all the details. It also includes a diagram of gravity so aliens know which part of us is the top and which is the bottom. Other images included are the solar system diagram, a map of Earth's landmass, and depictions of things like mountains and trees. So yes, NASA is actually sending our nudes out to space. The fact that they are doing this shows that at least a small part of the organization believes that aliens are out there to receive this message.